I'd like to call the work session order for May 13th, 2024. City Clerk, please read roll call.
Let the record reflect that Councilmember Campbell is not present, but all other members are.
Okay, thank you. We don't need a, right? Thank you. We have 4 items on the agenda tonight. Would like to remind council that staff will be pausing intermediately to answer any questions. The first item is the library master plan. Guyleen Orlansky, Arts and Culture Administrator, will present. Next item to hear is an update on traffic management and signalization. Chris Bridges, Deputy Director of Engineering, will present. The next item is business registration permit code amendment. Mark Massey, City Attorney, will present. And our last item is an update on the city traffic, signals, camera, license plate readers, and overview of real-time crime center. Justin Fair, Deputy City Manager, will present. First up, go ahead and introduce yourself for who's listening in. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm Guyleen Orlansky, Arts and Culture Administrator, and joining me tonight I have Hillary Craiglow and Kimberly Silk of Attain Partners. They're the consulting firm we contracted to conduct the library master plan, which we'll be presenting today. We're pleased to have this opportunity to speak with you today about our library.
Very excited to be here with you. Before we start, did you know a recent study found that 54% of people aged 13 to 40 visited a physical library within the past year? And it's a myth that if you don't read, you don't need a library. Libraries are so much more than books. People visit libraries even if they don't identify as readers. Yet, book reading remains a popular pastime, with the most recent data showing that almost 3/4 of all adults have read at least one book in some format in the past year. The average reader will read 12 books in a year, and our young generation, Generation Z, those aged 12 to 26, are visiting libraries at a greater pace than their older counterparts.
So in 2023, 91%, and I'm going to repeat that, 91% of our Goodyear residents rated the library with a high satisfaction rating.
The city should be very proud of this. It is a testament to the city and the investments that all of you have made in the community through the library and to the dedication of the library staff.
So we're nearing 2 years in the new Georgia T. Lord facility. We more than doubled our previous library footprint, and it's really a beautiful and welcoming facility with a lot of new amenities. We hear from patrons all the time on how much they love the children's area with the treehouse theme, the self-serve cafe, the study rooms, not to mention all of the places you can just grab a book and read on the 1st or 2nd floor of the library. The new library has had a positive impact on public opinion of the library. This council understands that the public library plays a key role in the high quality of life. And a goal of the 2022-2024 strategic plan specified creating a library master plan. To this end, in 2023, Goodyear contracted Attain Partners to conduct the library master plan. Through this plan, the consultants evaluated current operations, they compared Goodyear Library to peer libraries, they analyzed library trends, and had a robust outreach efforts with stakeholders and members to hear what they want from their library. Currently, the library is operated by the Maricopa County Library District through an intergovernmental agreement. This master plan explores different operating models so Goodyear is set up for future success. The City of Goodyear continues to see rapid growth, and this plan will help with the decision-making to keep up with that growth. All right, so before we jump into the future, it's good to know where we came from. So back in 2009, we had a one-room library. It was next to the IOB, our interim office building for City Hall. When my kids were little, that's where they went, and they loved to go to that library to go get a book. You know, but we grew. So in 2014, we moved into a 10,000 square foot library, and it was amazing. It served our needs. It was just what we needed. And now we've grown again, and we're in the Georgia T. Lord Library. We've had an amazing journey that has kept our residents' needs at the forefront of decision-making. Through each of these iterations, we have had a long relationship with Maricopa County Library District to operate these spaces as we have grown. On this slide, you'll see that we are calling out May of 2017, and it's an important date because that was the date that Goodyear's population was over 50,000 people, and that was the time in which Goodyear needed to start paying for library operations. We also then, June 15th of 2022, we extended that intergovernmental agreement with the county, and they made the move with us here to the Georgia T. Lord Library in August of 2022, which brings us to now. The current IGA will expire July of 2027, and we're at a perfect time to discuss the future operations of the library. Today, Hillary will share the findings of the master plan to help inform this council and city staff decisions for future planning.
So from the beginning, the master plan process was designed to provide the city with information and data to make informed decisions that are best for your community. The community engagement process included interviews with stakeholders and used multiple methods to gather feedback from Goodyear residents. Throughout the master plan process, we produced multiple reports. The current state report describes the current level of library services, programs, and collections. We use the word collections to describe items such as books that a library provides for borrowing by the community. The library activity analysis report takes a deep dive into how residents are using the library now, and the benchmarking report compares this activity to peer libraries in the Valley and select cities nationwide. The community engagement report contains all the data we collected during the on-site visit and the online community survey. We've provided expansion indicators that describe a set of markers that, when tracked, will signal when and how to extend library operations. We've provided 2 operational models that describe in detail 2 paths forward for how to operate the Goodyear Library. So the current state. The Goodyear Library served a population of just over 100,000 residents in 2022 to 2023. It was open for over 3,000 hours last year, and currently the library is open 64 hours per week. And last year, the library welcomed over 180,000 in-person visitors. Close to 260,000 print items were borrowed by residents. Almost 16,000 people attended 315 in-person library programs. The library employs 21 staff members. The collections budget was just over $118,000, and the total operating budget last fiscal year was just under $1.2 million. Our current state report covered 4 main areas. Collections, which provide a wide range of print and digital materials, which are selected according to the Maricopa County's collection development policy. The library's very popular programs are planned and promoted by the county and are designed to support lifelong learning and enrichment for all of Goodyear. Your beautiful and functional library spaces are designed to serve the diverse needs of the growing Goodyear community. And libraries rely on many technologies to help run library operations and other technologies to enhance the user experience. So technologies facilitate the library's inventory control system and improve access to different types of collections. And in terms of the patron experience, technologies are also available for checkout and use. Computer terminals are available in the building, and Wi-Fi hotspots and Chromebooks are available for borrowing. The library activity analysis report shows the Goodyear Library is a busy place. Residents visit the library consistently and take advantage of the longer open hours now available Monday to Thursday and on Sundays. Storytime programs for children and caregivers account for the highest percentage of programs. They're well attended and in high demand. Children's print materials account for 41% of the collection and 60% of the items borrowed. So these are the Valley City libraries we looked at most closely. You can see in terms of in-person visits, Goodyear Library punches well above its weight compared to its Valley peers. Your city library has the highest percentage of visitors by population served. Compared to Valley peers, Goodyear Library offers more programs than the average. Program attendance is the highest in the Valley, with 14% of the population service area attending programs at the library at some point last year. While the Goodyear Library's collection is small compared to the average collection per location of its Valley peers, the collection is in high use. Goodyear's print collection is higher than Avondale and Buckeye, who both have significantly larger collections of materials for checkout. I already mentioned this was a community-engaged process. Our methods included an online community survey that gathered 340 responses. The survey was in the field early December to late January. In addition to the quantitative data we received, the survey collected a great deal of rich, open-ended feedback from residents. In December, when my team and I visited Goodyear, that week the library hosted an open house where the community participated in different feedback exercises. Goodyear residents were very generous with their time and enthusiastic to talk about their library. That same week, we interviewed stakeholders, groups including council members, city staff, library staff, and the Friends of Goodyear Library. We also conducted interviews with key groups who use the library, including teens, parents, and seniors. Community feedback about the library was consistently positive. It also reflected a need to increase the print collection, invest in additional library services, especially the high-demand programs, and extend the library's reach to high-growth areas of Goodyear. When asked to prioritize their top 3 library values, Goodyear residents indicated that their top value is continuous learning. 26% of respondents seek library opportunities that encourage learning all along the lifespan. Other primary values were access to library resources and services and intellectual freedom. When asked what they love about their library, 52% of respondents praised the library's building, and it is beautiful. 15% highlighted its appeal for study and focus. And in terms of where they'd like to invest in the library, 23% of respondents support at least maintaining but expanding the catalog, meaning more materials for borrowing. 19% support the current level, if not expanding, programming. When asked to respond to this question, I wish the library offered, residents expressed equal interest, 38% each, in more programs and services and an increased access, meaning accessibility to library spaces and materials. Through open-ended feedback, the community emphasized wanting more books in a variety of genres. Comments specifically note juvenile nonfiction and graphic novels, and nonfiction for adults, and books in other languages. To address the community's demand for more materials, the city is already working with the library to increase the current collection of 41,000 items to 60,000 items by the end of the year. And that is great work, responding very quickly to community interests. When thinking about the library facility, patrons were concerned with keeping the teen space welcoming for teens and offering more resources in that room, plus more study space for students and expanding Wi-Fi. Several responses describe wanting more community partnerships, more programs for all ages, and expanding the area for children with toys or pretend play space, maybe props or manipulatives. Library resources and programs support workforce development and access to information that foster innovation and job creation. By providing shared space for learning, exploration, and social interaction, the library brings communities together. Stakeholders, such as yourselves, recognize the need for thoughtful, strategic planning. Okay, in terms of expansion, as with any municipal facility, several indicators signal when and how to expand library services. Population growth across the city and at the neighborhood level. Increasing demand for library programs, materials, and space. Goodyear's current population, now well over 100,000 residents, indicates the need for an additional branch, particularly towards the southern part of the city. The library's high satisfaction rating is itself an indicator that the community will continue to have high expectations of their library, their space, programs, materials, and services. The significant investment of another facility requires serious consideration. Fortunately, now is a perfect time to invest in short-term solutions that have modest costs. Such as increasing the collection size and variety across genre, age groups, and languages. I just mentioned this is already happening and should continue to happen. Expansion can mean more staff. Investing in more staff can deliver more programs and establish more partnerships for deeper city engagement and coordination. And enabling library paraprofessionals, these are specialists without a library degree, to deliver programs. Right now, library paraprofessionals are not delivering programs. There's also library vending machines. Yes, library vending machines are standalone, self-service for quick fix book lending. While short-term approaches to meeting community expectations are deployed to bridge that gap, Goodyear can begin planning more permanent solutions. So as additional amenities are planned throughout the city, consideration should be given to co-locating with a library branch. Temporary pop-ups are creative ways to offer library services in parks, community gathering places, festivals, and locations across the city. You can provide a pop-up with as little of an investment as $500. And bookmobiles. Yes, you can extend the library's reach by growing areas of the city by purchasing a bookmobile, a library on wheels, where people can borrow items, they can attend programs, and access Wi-Fi. The estimated cost for a bookmobile is anywhere between $100,000 and $300,000. While short-term approaches to meeting community expectations are deployed to bridge this gap, Goodyear can begin planning more permanent solutions. As additional amenities are planned throughout the city, consideration should be given to Library Branch, and the Georgia T. Lord Branch becomes the city's flagship. This library can begin to include special and historical collections that document the cultural history of your city.
All right, thank you, Hillary. We'll now pivot to discussing operational models for the library. So through the master planning process, 2 operational models were explored: outsourcing operations or self-operating the library. For the outsourcing option, 2 options are available. You can have privatized operations or government operations. For privatized operations, we found that it had too many limitations, and it would not provide the level of service that Goodyear residents are accustomed to. Due to this, Maricopa County Library District is the best option as the outsourced provider. The other operations model is to transition to a self-operating municipal public library. This option would mean that Goodyear would take over all aspects of operating the library, and we're going to look at these 2 options. So the outsourcing model is what we're currently doing, and it does have some limitations, such as staff are all county staff, collection and display decisions, are county-led, and as Goodyear looks to expand, we would be working with the county as a partner in that decision-making. Our experience with the county is they are very open to these discussions, and they look for mutually beneficial outcomes for all parties. What we do gain by outsourcing is a cost-effective way to provide high level of library services. We gain library expertise from specialized county staff, economies of scale for purchasing materials, technology, and staffing, as well as a standardization and accountability for policies and procedures that the county handles. The other option for Goodyear would be to explore self-operating. With a city-operated library, we would have complete autonomy in the decision-making for library operations. This does come at a higher cost. It is an estimated $600,000 more per year to self-operate, which is about a 40% increase from what our current outsourced model is. If the decision was made to move to this model, it would be a 2-year process for the transition. Although we would work to minimize disruptions to customers, we would anticipate a dip in customer satisfaction during the transition. In this model, Goodyear would have full responsibility of the library, which would have impacts across multiple departments that would be addressed during the transition phase. Departments such as HR, finance, legal, IT would be gaining additional responsibilities along with the Parks and Recreation Department. As a self-operating library, Goodyear would be responsible of all policies, procedures, and customer interactions through book challenges and concerns. As we look at the data included in the plan about the 2 operating models available, staff has taken into consideration the cost and impacts of both. Due to the current high level of patron satisfaction, staff recommends continuing to outsource library operations to Maricopa County Library District until the growth of our library services tips the balance for economy of scale and the cost to operate independently are equal to the cost to outsource. We do know that we're quickly growing as a city, and per resident feedback, they want more. They want more books, more study spaces, more programs, more community gathering spaces. To address this, we can begin working now with the county to explore alternative methods for delivering library services, such as pop-ups and bookmobiles, with keeping an eye on development for future co-locations or standalone library buildings. These expansion opportunities will be brought forward to council for future discussion. With this master plan, we have the tools needed to address residents' needs and how, when, and where library services will grow for the future. So, Mayor and Council, I want to thank you for the time to share the information about the library. While I shared a staff recommendation about outsourcing library operations, I do want to make clear that the master plan that is on the May 20th agenda for adoption by council does not include an operational recommendation. The staff recommendation provided tonight was from staff utilizing the data within the plan to make an informed recommendation. By adopting the library master plan, council and staff will have the tools needed to make future operational and expansion decisions. And with that, Mayor and Council, I'd like to open it up for you for discussion.
Okay, thank you. First up, go ahead.
I'll start it off. I absolutely love it. I love the library. My kids are your age. When we started, our children, same thing. You'd get your one book, and you'd have to drive all the way up to Estrella. And so seeing the growth here, because arts and culture, it's the heart of Goodyear. That's what people want. It's a quality of life issue. I love the idea of continuing with the county. I think they've done a great job. Financially, I think we get more bang for our buck from them, from what you've been saying. And I assume if there's like a run on a book, it's easier for us to get more like Harry Potter and whatever, for example, because the county has those resources that they can get from other libraries, right?
So Mayor, Councilmember Loretano, we do. So they have, because of their size and scale, they have some purchasing pieces that would go well. And they also have policies in place for when to buy a book, to when to increase that collection. So they, within their policies, have established that, which is really nice because then they're trying to meet the needs of the community.
And I don't know if you remember this. I remember they used to have a bookmobile that used to come up to Estrella. I think it was the county. I didn't know then, but do they have one we can use or borrow or in service?
I'm going to look over my shoulder because we do have some county library staff here. I don't believe they have a bookmobile right now, but they
It was
might.
a long time ago, so don't age me.
They're-
Not right now.
So I would like to recognize that we have Jeremy Reeder, the director of the Maricopa County Library District, with us in our audience, but he's saying not at this time. They do have book lockers that they do right now, much like when you go to Amazon to pick up your packages, that they do already have that implemented within the county. So some of these alternative ways to bring library services in an interim phase while we're waiting for a second branch, they are on board to be able to provide those to our community.
And I love the pop-up idea. I think that's very reasonable, for a cost to bring that to areas, especially to the south and to West Goodyear. Because the one thing about not having a branch up in that area is it's really great that, the kids can come down here after school, read a book. Not everybody can do that because of the distance to get up to Goodyear. So I love the co-locate idea. Maybe we can have those conversations as they develop King Ranch and Estrella more. Maybe they can help us out with something up there because that's an amenity for their residents. I know they have an old home finding center up there, maybe, who knows? So I do love that. And I also know when we had discussions, when we talked about it, I looked at other libraries where, and this is the future, this is my dream, so don't paint over there. Don't rain on my dream. I know there's some like the Missoula Library, you could check out musical instruments or artwork. And so I think I see a future here that I think is absolutely wonderful for the community. So I love what you've done and I would love to see the pop-ups. I think that's fiscally conservative that we can do now, right? And I think it's a great plan. So thank you very much for your presentation. I love the library.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Well, I wanted to thank you, Hillary and Kylene, for the process that you went through. Our meeting was just fascinating. I thought, how can you talk about a library that much? And we had a lot to talk about. So I think you've done a really thorough analysis. I'm really pleased with the high customer satisfaction. I think our biggest challenge to even what Sherry was proposing is space. And, there's only so much space. And honestly, I think that the way we're growing, we're probably going to need more space anyway. I foresee a time when the city hall says, yeah, we need that space for our employees and we build a standalone. I mean, anything's possible. But I think they're being innovative, looking at alternative methods. And I agree. I think the library, the county's been doing a great job managing the library. thank you for coming tonight, Jeremy. Really appreciate that, and have been really responsive. I wanted to also commend you on doing a thorough analysis and making a sound staff recommendation, which I concur with.
Councilmember Stipp?
Yeah, exactly. Great presentation, the depth of everything. When did you say the contract expires with the county right now?
Mayor, Councilmember Stipp, our current intergovernmental agreement expires in 2027.
Oh, 27. So we still got a couple years before
Yes.
we get through that. Okay. So I debated about whether to share this little nugget of my life, but I'm going to anyway. I'm a huge fan of John Oliver. He did a piece a couple of weeks ago on public libraries. While it was comedic and sad and tragic, all rolled into one. When you say, oh, you can rent musical instruments, there are some libraries where you can rent literally taxidermied animals. So, I mean, it is insane, the things that are, yeah. So I didn't want to rain on that, but it's kind of, it's insane. But I think the thing that really stood out to me with the master plan was really identifying that that the library itself and the library system is not dead. I think if you go back to when we first got on council, there was conversations about we probably need to close these things. No one's going to read books anymore, and all the rest of that. So to see the data and that came from that from the study, I think was very reassuring as we move forward. So I think that's great. The second location piece is, I think, is going to be critical for us going forward. So when we start talking about future strategic plan projects in the fall, this absolutely needs to be part of that discussion. I was getting fearful that we were going to start to make decisions tonight for something that is a strategic initiative to talk about later. So I'm glad we're okay there. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the Estrella Mountain or King Ranch development, depending on how that rolls out with time. There's retail space that may be available in EMR that we can use to do a smaller kickoff satellite. I know that there's a couple of places up there that we can do that depending on the cost as we go through. I think as we start having ongoing discussions with Harvard, we need to be thinking about land swap opportunities or opportunities with Harvard Investment Group up there to look at that and what we're doing. We are always thinking about the public safety facilities, but perhaps we need to think about a little mini annex or something in that regard. The only little bit of rain I'm gonna do is this. We saw the list a couple of weeks ago. We have a future project list that exceeds $1 billion, so this just needs to fill into that, and we need to figure out how to do this the smartest way possible. But waiting until it's too late or until we have the money to actually pull the trigger is probably too late. So I think we really have got to be very strategic about it, especially given the desire that the community has for the library. So I don't want to think that becomes the teeter-totter that we all have to stand on. I was surprised that we didn't get a recommendation within the report, so I was glad to hear a recommendation tonight. And I was very happy to hear you say that it was remain outsourced. And I think I want to really commend the library district. We have had from the outside looking in, a great partnership with you. And the service that you guys provide is really outstanding. And quite frankly, I don't know that there's a way for us to do it any cheaper than you do with the quality that you have, as long as we're maintaining that partnership approach. So I greatly appreciate that. It was reminiscent, and this is my final comment, is the city of Tempe used to run their own transit system, and they ran their own buses, and they They did all that themselves, and then a number of years ago, they turned all that service over to Valley Metro. And they started to run into service delivery issues with their provider. We don't have that situation. They went through and studied the cost analysis of them bringing it back in-house, and it turned out to be a little bit more expensive for them to do it, but they would have complete control over that. However, they lost the scalability, they lost the ability to really take advantage of the region as opposed to doing it all in-house. And I know that there's a lot of talk about, well, we lose control or we don't even have any control. And quite frankly, I think we have to ask ourselves, do we really need control? We don't have to be in control of everything if the service delivery is there. So again, kudos to the library folks. I'm looking forward to what the next phase of this, what the master plan results in for us going forward. I think it becomes very informative, and we've got a couple years to figure that out, but it sounds like we're probably targeting a renewal of the IGA. So thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hampton?
A lot of what I was going to say has already been taken, but yeah, a lot of same stuff. I do agree. I think the partnership with Maricopa County has been a good thing for us. I've taken my kids to a little one near Old City Hall, and then the next library, and then this final library here too, as they've been growing. So it's been a good experience for them, and I think the staff there is great, and working with them for other events and resources, and yeah, they've been a good partner in my eyes. So I know they'll continue to be that way. So I appreciate all their hard work as well. And I know in the conversation we talked about musical instruments, I think that'd be something fun. But obviously you gotta look at what that would look like in the future. I think that'd be a good partnership with our potential, the Alice Cooper thing coming as well, and some other things in our community, especially if we're pushing art and culture, future people in our community as well. And then, yeah, so I do agree I think continue the IGA would be my my preference as well. And also said, like land banking or looking at other ideas in the future for future libraries in our city. And it looks like on the map here, somewhere in Australia, it looks like. So, like I said, working with Harvard, or in the future, what that would look like. That location could be optimally. And then another thing, this was a side thing. I think at one point, this might not be in the plan, but at one point that little self-serve cafe that was going to potentially turn into an actual cafe. I don't know if that's something that's in there or not. I've had some business owners that have been interested in wanting to run like a little coffee shop, especially for all the Goodyear staff and employees. But I don't know if that was something in the plan or if that's something that is in the works in the future, or if that's so far out that not part of this.
Mayor, Councilmember Hampton, it's a great question. And so when this library was built, that self-serve cafe was built out so that if we ever do want to bring a provider in, we're able to do that. I think what we would look at, it wouldn't be part of our library master plan, but I think that's a larger discussion for the development and the businesses within this complex of this area of GSQ and how that impacts and what that looks like. And so we will always keep an eye on that, but we are prepared for the future if that happens.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like 2 business owners that were looking for a spot to do something like that. So I was just curious if that was something in the plan or what that timeline, or how open we were to that. So, and then, yeah, I think that's it. So thank you.
Anything else? No? Nope. You had something?
Yeah, I didn't touch on the bookmobile pop-up thing. I think I would have to question the viability of a bookmobile. If you look at the industry itself, I mean, not even the big library district is even running a bookmobile. And if we're looking at a upfront capital cost, plus we're looking at an ongoing cost for that as well. And I'm not sure that, one of the notes that I made is what's the ROI on the pop-up and the bookmobile? And I think I'd have to really question whether whether that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're very cute and they're awesome pictures in a very urban area, but I don't know that it makes. I love the one. It's a Connex box. The sides fold down. It turns into a little. And I love that. That's very LA. I love that. I don't know that our weather is conducive to that. Unless it comes with a shade structure and free water. But I think the rest of it is, there's a way forward on this, so I wanted to touch on the bookmobile.
Listen, great discussion from the council. I kind of like the idea. I think at some point, we're probably going to have an annex, probably close to Australia, as we expand, so all those people don't have to come all the way up here to the center of town to get that service. But you did a great job of laying it out. If you got 91% satisfaction, I think it's best to stay with what you got. So with that being said, I appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would, for those listening in, just introduce yourself and who's going to be doing the presenting.
Steve?
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Steve Cinto, City Engineer. With me tonight, I also have our Deputy Director of Engineering over Transportation, Christopher Bridges. And we're here to give you an update on our efforts related to traffic management and signalization and engineering.
Great. And good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Bridges, Deputy Director of Engineering. So we'll jump right in here. Steve, are you going to do this slide for us?
Yeah. So tonight's presentation, we'll cover several topics. First, we'll review the council retreat where we talked to you about multiple topics, and we're back here to give you some updates on those. Second, we had a couple phases of pilot projects recently that we've kept you up to speed on, and we'll go through some of our findings and recommendations based on the outcome of those. Third, we had an outside consultant perform a comprehensive assessment of our Traffic Management Center, or TMC. We have some key findings and recommendations to share with you. And next, we'll have some additional updates on current and future projects we have going on, including technology enhancements and some of our 5-year capital projects. And then finally, we'll have time for additional questions and discussion. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Chris, who will walk through some of these details with you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. So we'll start off with reviewing when we talked about at the retreat. We went over some traffic and signal management ideas, concepts, and what's available out there as far as different types of technology. And then we got into a little more detail where we talked about what technology the City of Goodyear does use today and comparing that to what's out there and what's upcoming. Key considerations when you're making decisions related to traffic signals, like traffic volume, safety, a variety of issues like that. And then what our next steps were planned for at that time. So we're going to get into those in a little more detail. So without further ado. So as Steve mentioned, traffic signal timing pilots, we did do 2. The first one actually went pretty well. That was from February until about April, and then we did a second one, which we learned quite a bit, and cut that one pretty short. It wasn't as well received, and I will get into those in a detail in a little bit. Again, as Steve mentioned, the assessment of the TMC, which was good to have an independent look at everything in the TMC. How is it set up? How does it function physically, operationally, staffing issues, all things that make a successful TMC happen. We did implement the city preemption guideline, and that is in effect today. Connecting fiber to all traffic signals, and that's one that is pending FY25 budget process, where we do have CIP projects proposed to connect 10 more traffic signals to the network so that they are connected to the TMC. And then improving the Public Stuff app, where it's been very critical for us to hear not just I have a problem at an intersection, I'm sitting here for a long period of time, but to let us know what day did that happen, what time of day did it happen. So questions are now geared towards we can get some specific information and then get back into the system and see, was there a malfunction in the system? Is it something that we can change? We haven't had a ton of feedback from this. We looked back and pulled the data from February 5th when we started the first pilot. We had 12 total comments submitted. 7 of those were related to traffic signals, and 1 you could tell because it looked like it was copy and pasted, but they were primarily from side leg streets trying to get onto the main line. but only 7 of those 12 were actual signal comments. So getting into more detail on the pilot program, like we said, there were 2 phases. We were focusing on the corridors which we run coordination, which are Litchfield, Bullard, Estrella Parkway / Pebble Creek, Van Buren, McDowell, and Indian School. Phase 1, as I mentioned, started February 5th. That went to a consistent time of coordination on those corridors, 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Phase 2 started the following Monday, April 8th, and then, as I stated, we ended up cutting that one short. What we saw during this was sort of eye-opening, but it was more of a progression change than a delay change. If we looked back at the data, it was showing that, yes, you were stopping more frequently at about a 2% rate, but the delay, average delay per vehicle at your intersections was the same. So you were probably stopping more, but you were stopping less frequent, but the stopping more is what got, I think, people's attention. And that was running fully actuated during the middle of the day, except for the commuter times. So we've now gone back to the phase 1 is what we're operating today on the coordinated corridors. And then running through these 2 phases actually brought about some ideas on going forward, some changes that we could make additionally to this. The phase 1 seems to work pretty well, with a few exceptions. On the weekends, people are having to sit on a side street at 6 in the morning where they weren't having to before. So the frustration, and I've seen this not from the data, but from actually being out at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, walking around my neighborhood, a lot of it's on Canyon Trails, and seeing people getting anxious to want to go because they weren't having to sit. Now they're having to sit. Running until 8:30 at night was fine for most of the corridors, but where we saw a delay or drop off in performance was on Estrella, because we were running that until about 10:30 at night. So our arrivals on green actually went down a little bit, but it wasn't totally detrimental, which is why the first phase is actually a really good data point for us. But what we did learn is a combination of the 2 phases, that there are some segments that we're running coordination on that we don't think we need to run coordination on. So if you're looking at Pebble Creek north of McDowell, we think we can cut that back to fully actuated and not run coordination right now. And then a portion of Van Buren west of Saraval could also perform that way. And the reason being, there's just not that much volume there, and the complaints we're getting or seeing are people on the side street trying to get onto the main line, and the actuated actually helps that. So I'm going to get into the assessment, and it was a pretty high-level report, but it had quite a bit of detail, compared us to other TMCs across the country, other cities or operations, and these are the 15 items that were covered through there, and I won't read them all to you, but kind of just in general: operations, staffing, training opportunities, performance metrics, and identifying how to make the best decisions going forward. So out of those 15 elements, there were 3 key takeaways. First one is TMC operations. The second one is to update our intelligent transportation system plan. And then the third is establishing performance metrics. So TMC operations is, when do we have people in it? How long do we have them in it? Is it a longer period of time, Monday through Friday? Is it also on the weekends? And what is it that they can perform to that? And what does the staffing level need to be able to cover those extended hours? And does it also include the weekends? Way down the line might be 24/7, but we are nowhere near that. Updating the intelligent transportation system plan. Our plan, the last one we did, was from 2008. The longest projects identified in that 2008 plan were to be done in 2019. So we're way beyond the useful life of that, and identifying projects so we can use the ITS plan to look at some of our operational efficiencies and what our staffing levels can be, but also technology has changed. 2008, the iPhone was 1 year old. So just to kind of put it in perspective, a lot of things have changed technology-wise that we can address from ITS perspective. And then performance metrics, I'll get into that a little bit more going forward here. But we have also identified one of the big operational improvements is emergency operations and traffic incident management. So right now, what is happening is if there's something that occurs and we're not in there, it takes the time to then travel from wherever our staff may be to get to the operations center to be able to react. One of the other ones that was identified was looking at major events or special events, which we've talked about in the past. And to bring you up to speed on that, we did organize a meeting with PD, parks, engineering staff, and to talk about how can we better plan for each of the individual event. Our next ones coming up are the high school graduations. So we had talked about making some tweaks to be able to get people in and out of the parking more efficiently during the graduation events based on what we saw at spring training. Trying to have dual in instead of one lane of traffic coming in. Also having officers in different locations, and then better coordination between the TMC staff and PD and parks all at the same time so that there's a constant line of communication. Previously, what was happening is PD's out there, they're working a signal, but they can't see what's happening down the line. Now, if we establish a radio communication between the TMC and PD, our TMC staff can jump on and say, hey, I'm gonna have to jump in here because you've got a huge queue of vehicles coming your way that you're not gonna see. So one, don't be offended. You're hitting the button, nothing's gonna happen, but we can help you get through that a little bit and then we'll turn it back to you. That's communication that wasn't happening before and that we can do going forward. Creating formal traffic management plans on the front end. So, hey, if there's an event and I-10 shuts down at Bullard, this is a standard operating procedure that you as a TMC operator, if you are in there, this is how you would implement that. It's not just oh gosh, I'm just gonna start flipping, green lights here and having everybody go, but it's actually a well thought out approach that everybody knows, PD, us, emergency services, so that we can address that and keep people moving off of the freeway and through our city network. I mentioned staffing and scheduling. That is a question of how frequent, how often. Recommendations in the assessment were that, yes, we need to have more people there in person and having something like a TMC operations supervisor and then operators that their primary responsibility is watching the traffic and making sure that things are happening, but they could also be reviewing these traffic management plans or other types of activities, planning ahead and thinking forward while also being in the building to be able to address as things come up. And then lastly, regionalization, improving our interagency coordination. There's a technology group called Aztec, which is an ITS regional meeting that happens bi-monthly. We have not been able to attend because we've been severely understaffed, but now good news is we're fully staffed and we have a brand new assistant city traffic engineer and his first meeting is this week for that. So we are now attending those and we'll have better coordination on a regional basis. So updating the ITS plan is clearly a strategic plan for us to identify what specifically those staffing and resources are going to be and how we phase those going forward. What our operational efficiencies can be from our new technology and what those technology enhancements may be. And we've already talked a little bit about like radar detection and things like that. I'll touch on that in a little bit more here, but there could be other technology enhancements that we're just not utilizing yet or familiar with. And I mentioned last update in 2008. Performance metrics. So the performance metrics are going to allow us to be able to see how is this system functioning and where do we need to improve, what are we doing well, what are we not. It improves accountability. It's not just, hey, I feel like this is red all the time, or I feel like this is green, or people are running red lights. We're actually able to track some of that through the data of the system. And then currently, through the phases 1 and 2 of the pilot projects, these are the metrics that we were using. Delay at the intersection, red light running, arrivals in green, traffic volume, and travel time. And then going forward, some of the things that we would look at as far as alternative metrics might be a volume to capacity. some of our issues we have, I'll go give an example, like Pebble Creek Estrella under I-10. You've got 3 lanes each direction coming up to the freeway, and then it's 2 lanes in each direction. That's a huge hit on your capacity issue. That's causing a lot of problems there. Thankfully, we're addressing it through a CIP project in the near future to add more capacity under there. But that's a metric I think could be a benefit to us to help plan a little bit more going forward on where we're going to attack CIP-wise, not necessarily just traffic signals. All right, additional updates. And I mentioned radar detection. We have, this is where I get to be a little bit of a nerd on you, is we've been testing radar detection at Cotton and Yuma. And it's done phenomenally well compared to what we had thought. We've done 2 different units. The first one didn't do really well. It had trouble picking up beyond 400 feet, which we were thinking it was going to do better than that. The unit that we're looking at right now, which would be what we would want to use going forward, can actually detect out to 1,200 feet. And it's amazing, the accuracy. So when you're talking about approaching an intersection and being able to make a decision on should this light be green longer or should it be red now, is that safe for the person traveling? How far are they back from it? So red, we talked about dilemma zone protection, where if you're at a certain point, you need to make a decision. Am I stopping or am I not? The system would be able to say, hey, this car is probably not going to stop. Let's give another second of green and let them go through and then change. So that has actually performed wonderfully. I'm very excited about it. The next part that we have, and we found this is a part of the system we use today, which is Econolite. They have something called eDaptive software module. And that is a relatively inexpensive approach for us. And we talked at the retreat about adaptive, which is your signals sharing information on a real-time basis. That's what this does with very minimal improvements to our system. It can use, especially with the radar detection, that we can make that decision-making process through our signals faster, and it's not based off of old information that, hey, that, a week ago or 2 days ago, this is what was happening there. This is what's happening there right now. And then the pilot program opportunity to move forward with the radar detection. We did put in for the CIP, well, actually it was CIP for multiple years to do radar detection. Good news is, and I can't remember if it's on the next slide, it's not, we did receive a $500,000 grant from Congress to be able to move forward with this pilot program. So we're going to, as soon as we get that money, be able to start implementing that right away, but that will also supplement the funds that we put in as a request in the budget. And then I mentioned we have 15 roadway projects, 5 signal projects, tying in also our 5 ITS projects to get all those signals connected. And then lastly, the supplemental request for enhanced maintenance. A big portion of that, I think it's a $1.5 million, is that correct?
Yep.
Yes. $1.5 million request in the budget is striping. We're behind on striping. We need to do a lot more of it a lot quicker. So that's why that dollar amount is a little bit higher. But then also working on a striping program, so to speak, where we have a better idea annually what we're hitting and when. So we've already started developing plans that can address that. And then obviously continuing to monitor and audit the usage of preemption devices. And that's going to be an ongoing program for many months to be able to get the data level accurate enough that we know when the preemption is being used versus was there code 3 for fire or priority 1 or 2 for PD, and identifying how that's being used and then matching it to the guideline that is approved. And with that, I will turn it over for any questions or discussions. Steve?
And Chris, if you don't mind, just one point of clarification going back to our coordinated corridors we discussed. Chris did mention that we're looking at a reduction in the length of the corridors based on our findings from the pilot. We haven't reduced them yet. We're still evaluating that. We just wanted to make that clarification. That could be coming.
What I thought was kind of interesting today, I made a right-hand turn on Litchfield, heading west on McDowell. And I had somebody to the left of me, probably doing about 50, 55 miles an hour. And I'm holding it at 45. So as I was approaching those lights, I was turning green, but he had to slow down and put his brakes on. Just as he's getting up to the light, he's got his brakes on, and I'm coming up and it's turning green, so I'm going through it. It was that way all the way to Estrella Parkway, in which he got there the same time as I did, but I'm sure his brakes got a little more war on me because he's going fast, hitting the brakes, going fast, hitting the brakes. So I'm not sure how your radar addresses those kind of drivers out there, but I just found it kind of interesting when I was doing 45. I hit all greens, and he's hitting all reds because he's hitting the gun, slowing down, hitting the gun, slowing down. So unfortunately, there are drivers out there. I shared with the chief the other day, I'm sitting at a light just west of Dysart, and some guy flies there in a muscle car, probably doing about 70 miles an hour on the right-hand side when there was cars stopped there. Now, if that car would have started and moved over there, it would have been one heck of a mess there. So
Yeah.
I'm glad what the chief's doing as far as the ticketing and whatever out there, because unfortunately, there's still a lot of crazy drivers out there. So, and I appreciate all the efforts you're doing here. With that, who wants up? Anybody? Go ahead, Bill.
I'm not letting this topic go by without comments. So you kind of talked about it in the last slide. You did, but you didn't. And it was in the first slide as auditing the preemption guideline. That was, I don't know, almost 2 years in the making of trying to get that whole thing resolved. What's the plan for auditing that? Is that going to be continuous, or are we just going to do it for a few months and then call it good?
Yeah, so
Because it's a problem.
Yeah, that's a great question. The guideline calls for quarterly auditing. So luckily, we have Susan in the city manager's office is going to help us with that. That's our plan right now, and that she'll pull those reports from PD and fire, and then we'll coordinate with the preemption list and be able to say, date, time, does this line up? It's not going to be a really easy, no problem, done. It'll take some effort, but that's the plan going forward.
I mean, I understand why you would do it quarterly, but I would imagine if you did it every month, probably a little smaller data set to look
Yeah.
through, but hey, you guys do you. You mentioned fiber to all of the lights. Is that actually done?
No, because the 10 signals that are not connected right now are a proposed project in the FY25 budget.
Okay, so the slide, the slide said completed projects. So it was a little hard to track whether that was
Understood.
actually done or not. So I think I'm very concerned about shortening your corridors. Because as you guys said, phase 1, you had one result. Phase 2, you had a completely different result from feedback. But the data itself was relatively insignificant. But I think the emotional impact was absolutely significant. And I think if you start jacking with these corridors and making them inconsistent, we're going to go right back to the same problem that we had. The data is not going to necessarily support the behavior. And I think that's the part that we forget about with this. The traffic signalization and driver behaviors, that is a human function. You are not going to solve it with a technological solution. You're going to just solve it through consistency. And I think once the lights become a little bit more consistent and you're not stopping at every other or every light, and that's what drives the frustration, which then means I'm going to drive 60 because if I can avoid stopping at 3 lights, I've just moved my timeline up 6 minutes, with each light being 2 minutes long. No, I get it. I'm not saying myself. I'm just saying in general. Or it is just the frustration of if I hit one more damn light, I am going to run the next person off the road. So we're not going to solve that with a technological or a data. It's like one of the only times we're not going to use data. This is strictly a human behavior function. So I'm just warning you right now, if you guys change that corridor north of McDowell, that is the worst corridor. There's more traffic lights there than anywhere else. And if those start flipping because somebody pulled up to turn right, I'm going to be the first one coming down here screaming, and I'm going to drag everybody who rings my phone line up. So please just be super careful of that. We're going to talk about the real-time crime center deal coming up here in just a little bit, and I looked at the photo of the TMC and some of those combined functions. I'm wondering if there's not an opportunity for those two things to be co-located. Because you're looking at the same cameras, you're looking at it's not crime, I mean, I think we really need to, in whatever exploration we do, we probably need to be thinking bigger than an officer in a conference room with one monitor. We have got to be thinking bigger, and that was, that photo was just, that really brought that to me. And then you talked about, which I love the idea of TMC being involved in moving special event traffic, et cetera. But the example that you used that's troublesome. So I've got tying an officer up, putting them at a traffic box, pushing a button to change the signal. Meanwhile, there's someone at the TMC who can do exactly the same thing. Why am I tying up a police officer to do something that someone sitting at TMC can do?
So sometimes that officer can do a better job, or they're doing just fine, but they also give the public perception of, hey, there's somebody here really paying attention to us and watching us. The TMC would only jump in when there was that little bit more of an extreme situation. So I hope
Yeah, I'm
that
getting
answers.
that.
Yeah.
I think even a streets guy in a vest standing there with a button in his hand will have just as good a public input, and it's not going to be a police officer on overtime. I would rather have those police officers on overtime doing the stuff that we need the police officers to do, and not pushing a button at a traffic light. So I think we got to think bigger on that. Obviously, opinion only. The KPIs, and I think I touched on this a little bit. The KPIs and technology. Those are fine, but they essentially become useless if the end result is people are upset. And it's hard. The only way to manage or to measure customer satisfaction is the lack of dissatisfaction. So we're getting no phone calls. People are happy. That's a good measurement. It doesn't matter how many stops on red. It doesn't matter none of the rest of that matters. If we're not getting phone calls and people are happy, that's what we're here. That's ultimately what we're here for. So I think you've got to be very, very careful about, and no offense to the PEs in the room, don't over-engineer this. This is really a simple scenario. It's about keeping people happy and moving them through the city. So I just caution us on getting too technical in what is really a very fundamental scenario. And then finally, my last comment on this is there are, and I know you want specific times, so I'm going to end up keeping a log. There are still times on the weekends after 6 a.m. when right turns are activating lights and the lights are changing like that. It changes green and then it immediately changes right back because someone turned right. And it's down that corridor north of McDowell, and it's down Bullard, primarily on Earl and Bullard, but it's happening at Pebble Creek Parkway, and it's happening at a couple of the other lights, primarily on the weekends. And I even sent a note to Lynette the other day. I think it's still going on. That should never, and I thought we talked about that you guys that was never going to be a scenario. Well, it's still happening, so I don't know how you're going back and auditing that kind of performance without a resident having to keep a log. And I'm telling you, the last thing you want me doing is trying to work public stuff while I'm driving. Because quite frankly, I can't work it while I'm sitting here. So anyway, I think this is really important. This is where customer satisfaction comes in. And getting, and I realize this is probably the smallest problem on the planet. But the one thing about the residents in our community is they're fairly content and they're fairly satisfied with what we're doing. And that's because we've solved these very minor issues that they'll actually let some of the bigger ones slide. But it's these little ones that are the ones that end up hurting us. So I'm thankful that this is the problem that we have. That this is the biggest problem we have in this city is traffic signals. I will take that all day long. So it's kudos to everybody in here, but we solved this problem, and then most of my complaints that I hear go away.
Thank you very much for the presentation and all the hard work to try to fix this problem. I don't think it's something that's ever going to be totally fixed. I think the mayor brought up one of the biggest problems. It's the human factor. Because I see that a lot, that someone will not clear the intersection, they'll wait, and so that delays the traffic going the opposite direction, and it kind of builds on it. So then the traffic coming the opposite direction gets further back and further back and further back. So I appreciate everything that you're doing, but I think there's some times of the day that no matter what we do, our public has to realize that it's only so much we can do to get people through there, and I do appreciate all the radar. I think that's a good idea for safety especially, because that is one of my biggest concerns is you'll sit there, it's a green light. It's not, it's solid green, and here comes the guy coming the other direction at like 65, just right through there. So that's what I told my kids, don't be the first one out in the intersection. Of course, if everybody does that, it slows down the traffic going the opposite way. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but until these people stop running red lights, stop going 65, because like the mayor said, you meet them at the intersection, you're right there next to them, they didn't get any further. They just put everybody at risk. So I do appreciate that. I appreciate the fact PD is out there looking for them, but you can't have an officer on every corner, unfortunately. So I do have a question there. When you were talking about Estrella, how it was backing up at the freeway, if you all see that, do you call PD and say, hey guys, they're blocking the box of the intersection and it's causing a ripple effect? Does someone from traffic let PD know, hey, we've got this problem there? How does that work?
Depends on how bad it's getting, because typically we're able to make some adjustments there. I'll give a specific example. So following the NASCAR race,
Yeah.
every time, there's all the campers all leaving all the same day on Monday after the race, right? And guess where they want to go? They want to go northbound to westbound, and there's not that capacity at either Litchfield or Bullard or Estrella going northbound, but they're typically coming out that back entrance onto Estrella and then taking Estrella up to the freeway and then going left. So it'll back up past Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And that is something where it's like watching it and saying, I'm going to give it to like this car, and gradually you can get it down over a few cycles. But because there's so many and there's slow moving vehicles, there's not a lot PD can do there. But if something got really bad, we would definitely be contacting PD and asking for assistance. But that's just so many cars in one lane trying to go the same direction and just not enough capacity. But we can address that internally at the TMC, and I've watched Hugh do it, and he's good at it. So we do pay attention to that stuff, but that's a real specific example. If something pops up and there is a crash or something, then yeah, we're going to coordinate with PD.
And for Estrella at MC 85, that is not hooked into our system, right?
No, MC 85 is a county highway.
Because however, when you switched it, now it seems to match better.
Maybe the county copied us.
I don't know. I was just going to say it matches better. It stops
Yeah.
and then they're all go at the same time. So I don't know. I thought you might have had some say in that. So
Maybe we did.
so I do appreciate that.
I
Can't take
don't know
credit
if I
for
take
it.
credit for what I can't take credit for, but yeah, exactly.
And then the striping, I do appreciate that you're looking into that with all the construction and the blacktop. It erases that striping. And if people aren't familiar with the city, they're not necessarily staying in their lane, and then they're going slow. And that's also those almost neon things that you put in the road too,
The
right?
reflectors, the raised reflectors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know some of those get gone after a while too,
do.
and those do help. So I do appreciate that. I look forward to you continuing to work in this area. I know you're gonna fix one and then an area is gonna grow and we're gonna have to change it. But I've noticed exactly what the mayor noticed going down Bullard. If I go the speed limit and Great Hearts is not in session, you keep
Right.
the school traffic out, I make it perfectly fine. you know, but then I see the people speeding and get stuck there every time. So I appreciate, I think you're on the right track, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hannigan?
No, thank you. I appreciate all your hard work. It shows that you're putting a lot of effort into it. And it's to everybody's point, it's going to be a continuous improvement effort forever as we
Yep.
continue to grow, to be new technologies come out, things like that. And I'm excited that you're excited about the new cameras that you said you put on Yuma and Cotton, because I live around that area too, so that's really handy. So, and even the other day, I was driving to Indian school and I hit green lights pretty much the whole way. So I know you guys there's a lot of things. I don't need to get in the weeds trying to help tell you guys how to do your job, but I just want to make sure, I know you guys are continuing to improve and make it better and better. So I thank you for all your effort. And then I'm sure this will be a conversation for the next or 2 sessions from now on the real-time center. Is the red light running? I saw that as a KPI or a data point that you have. Is that just, unless there's an accident, it's not like you're coordinating with PD, hey, we just saw a person run a red light necessarily.
No,
That seems
you
like a
can't,
lot
you
of
can't
effort.
watch somebody doing that.
No.
It's a data point that you pull out that the
Yeah.
system knows you're past the stop bar.
Yeah.
So it's gonna count that
is
vehicle if the
counted.
light has changed red, so, yeah,
It's
you
a
can
good
track
data
that.
to be like, hey, 'cause we see this corner is the one that always has red light
Correct.
running. Maybe PD could coordinate.
Right,
we
and,
should put
and
someone
in
there.
particular phases, like, is it the left turn off of, McDowell onto Pick a Street? Or is it the through movement? And we can then share that information, where right now we have a very small data
Yeah.
source, but if we saw a pattern through that KPI, and then we could say, hey, chief, this is what we're seeing, pass that along to, traffic units, and they can look at particular intersections or sections of the road where we know we've got issues, so.
Yeah, I think that's smart with the KPIs. If it rolls up to a certain level,
Mhm.
that it can share with our PD peers.
Yep.
Or if you see an area that has tons of accidents, maybe it needs to go to and analyze it for under traffic. or
Right,
under
is there
traffic.
something we can do different from
Yeah, maybe
our
it's
perspective and
engineered or
PD?
human
Yeah.
perform- or whatever it ends up being.
Correct.
Probably at that point has to be engineered. You can't train everybody in the whole city to not do whatever they're doing. So, okay. No, I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Right, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
This is a very technical subject that we've been talking about for some time, and it is interesting how it intersects human behavior and emotions and anecdotal stories. And I think we all have stories that we could tell about it, and we want engineering and technology to solve it. So
Right.
I feel like it collides and it certainly isn't simple. On each of these slides, you have all these dot points with topics, not a lot of content beneath it. So when I come back to look at this a few months later, like, I won't remember what we talked about today or how far we've come along, other than we're talking about things. And it's interesting to me, we've had the spring training field for 15 years, and now we're just talking about coordinating things, and NASCAR's been going on for years, and we're just now talking about looking at it holistically. So I would say that's a good thing. I mean, we're taking steps to address it, and certainly technology's going to have a role. In the beginning, we were talking about those corridors and light. There was a coordinated phase, and it was either attended or attenuated, but I'm thinking anybody in the public who's listening, they're not going to know. I'm not even sure really what. So we talked about 2 phases. I'm sure there must be more ways to address traffic than phase 1 or phase 2. So
Yes.
that's an ongoing analysis that you're going to have to do. But I guess because of the technical nature of it, what do you want the public to know? What's the public's takeaway from this presentation? What do they, going forward, tell us what they need to know?
So I think several of you have hit on it already. So coordination is set for 45 miles per hour. So you're gonna hit more green lights, and several of you mentioned that already. So if you're driving the speed limit, you're more likely to get particular corridors that were listed there. The important thing is yes, slow down at intersections, don't run red lights, don't Get on the public stuff app while you're driving, pull over and stop. But I think more importantly is that there's a team of professionals working on this every single day. And we're not going to get it right every single time, but we can change. And that's what we're doing. And I think we're making the steps and going the right direction, and that we do have the best interest for the public. There's nobody sitting out there going, ha ha ha, red lights. No, that's not what we want. We want to keep traffic moving and moving safely and efficiently. So just know that there's somebody behind the scenes working on that that's a dedicated person and professional about it, and it means something to them as well as the traveling public.
Very well said. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else want to add at this point? With
Yes,
that,
sir.
again, thank you for the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Before you start, when I asked the city manager, because apparently there's still some stuff going on down in our lovely legislature right now on sober living. Can you give us a kind of update, or somebody give us an update as far as what they're beating about to try to get through to the governor's office?
Haley is here to answer that question. Would it be better with the licensing portion of that?
If it's related to licensing, because we're probably not really noticed for updates otherwise, but if it
Well, I
factors into
think
this
it's,
discussion,
I think it could be related
Okay.
to
That's why I was
licensing,
wondering if it could be.
depending on what they actually end up putting on the bill.
Still working through a lot of that down there, and what that ultimately looks like. So if we can bring it up with the licensing, that's where I thought it might work.
if we're discussing licensing, we can talk about it at a city level. Otherwise, I might recommend we do a,
Well, let me ask this question specifically of our Intergov. Could it impact licensing what they're doing right now, as far as the bill and they're working through? And if the answer is yes, then we can talk about it. If not, then we let it go.
That would be a question for Haley and you, if,
okay. I don't know
Because the
what
question
you're
is, I know they're bantering it back and forth, and I don't know if it's going to impact licensing or not. So if it's not impacting licensing, or it's doing something else that won't impact us, then we just let it go. But I want to make sure that that's on the record if it is still going.
Sure. Maybe in the interest of making sure in full compliance with the open meeting law, why don't we take a break? And then I can chat with her, because I
Okay, all
haven't
right.
been up to speed either. Then we can.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute,
be fine.
10-minute
Thank
break,
you.
and
there are items in the kitchen
Okay.
if you're hungry. There,
sounds like a plan, and you're going
You've
to.
already-
Haley, and if
I will.
you just tell me if it's not appropriate, then we'll just move on with the presentation.
Thank you.
Back up, you're up, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up about your question before the break, I did speak to Haley. The information she has is probably not closely enough aligned with our presentation this evening to be in full compliance with the open meeting law, so just be conservative. We'll get some more information out to you to kind of give you an update about what's going on.
And that's fine.
down
I just wanted to make sure, because they have a tendency sometimes of pulling the rug out from underneath us, and I just want to make sure that it's not on that case, and that's the only reason why I asked, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Roy Massey, the city attorney, have Phil Cochran, the assistant city attorneys who's been assisting in drafting on the proposed business license ordinance. This is a follow-up to the April 29th meeting. Council had a number of questions on the draft, the ordinance that was presented. As you recall, the ordinance that was presented was to convert the business registration program that's been in place for a number of years over to a business license program. At that meeting, we talked about the difference between registrations and licensing. Council highlighted a number of questions during the course of that meeting, because the ordinance we presented, basically, if you were conducting business in the city, you're required to seek out a license from the city. Council had some questions regarding the applicability of that licensing program to certain categories of business going on in the city, home-based business, nonprofits, special event types of businesses. So we went back after the item was tabled at the 29th meeting. The ordinance that is attached to tonight's agenda, we've highlighted the areas where we've made some adjustments to try to address some of those issues. This is the time for us to check in and make sure we're on the right track on the draft ordinance, because if council gives us direction, we will come back at the next council meeting and present it for formal consideration. Again, the goal was to get the ordinance in place by July 1st, following a public outreach program to make sure that everyone's aware of the new requirements from the city. But at a high level, the areas that we drafted, that we addressed in the new ordinance typically had to do with broadening the definition of the casual activities and sales. That was an attempt to address some of the concerns brought up. I think the lemonade stand was brought up. That was already in the ordinance, but probably not as defined as it needed to be, that we weren't attempting to address those small, single, infrequent, private sale types of items in the city. So if you're selling a car, a private vehicle sale, you don't need a business license. If you're having a lemonade stand, a youth having a lemonade stand, that's not the type of item that we're trying to regulate in the city. Homemade goods, sales that are isolated in nature, garage sales would not fall under the business license program. If you're conducting a business activity that's less than 2 days in duration, that would not fall under the business license requirement. Or if your aggregate sales were under 5,000, you would be considered a casual sales activity and not be requiring a license in the city. So we're trying to pull those activities into that exemption. Home occupations, with certain exceptions, would be exempted from the license. Council asked some questions about the small, the accountant that's doing business in his home infrequently has customers coming in. Those would be exempted from having a business license in the city, as long as they don't have employees that don't live in the residence in the business. If you're having multiple employees come into the business, that's kind of getting beyond a small business. Yeah. Customers can come in within. There's certain requirements for just hours of operation and parking that would still apply, but as long as you meet that threshold of the home-based business, you wouldn't require a license. The exception to that would be if it's a residential type use. Anything that's involving residential uses are going to require a business license. We've also put in a second exception, or another exception for school-aged children involved in school fundraisers. If you're sending kindergartners for school, you're not going to require a business license. So it's a good catch. It's a good idea that was brought up at the meeting. We just want to make sure we're not capturing those small business type activities. It's really not the intent of the ordinance. Girl Scouts are probably going to fall under the casual business exception. Nonprofits, 501c3s, if you're a nonprofit, You're not going to require a business license unless you're in the business of operating residential type facilities, because there are examples of those that do exist. So that would be the exception. Independent contractors that are working under a parent company umbrella, that's the Avon exception. If you're selling those types of products, you're an independent contractor operating under a parent company, that would also not require a business license. Home-based business, tutoring, education, music lessons, any of those types. A little different than the other home-based businesses. We just wanted to be clear that those would not require a business license. And I think the last we had was special events. If you're conducting or operating a business at a special event, kind of falls under that casual sales as well. But if you're operating in a special event as otherwise defined in the city code, you also will not require a Goodyear business license. We also add some clarity that the city can give a 30-day warning before issuing a citation. Council had asked that question at the last meeting. We always viewed it was permissible, but we added some additional language that you may give a 30-day notice and have the opportunity for a business to come into compliance before a citation will be issued. It's permissive, it's not required, but it's a good business practice. There's also some questions about the fine schedule. We made some adjustments to that for first violation, after the first violation, second and subsequent violations. Previously, we had was $1,000 per event. Now we've put a $1,000 minimum, but you can go up to $2,500 for those repeat offenders. So give a little bit more of a range there on second and subsequent offenses to the business license violations. And with that, I think those were the major changes we made. Just ask if council has any direction and questions on the draft ordinance.
Councilmember Gillis? You're on.
No, you're off. Yep.
You're on.
Okay. Rorik, I want to know, I want to go back to discussing doing the business licenses online. Is that how you still got that drafted, is to do them online or in person?
I believe the answer we gave last time, and I'd looked at Jared, I believe it's all online at this point.
Okay, so that's what that's what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
The more that I looked into this, like I called you about the LLCs and stuff, I was thinking, I really would like us to look at more doing this in person, because then the people at the city are educated and versed on what business is what, and you have to show a license. You have to show a license when you sign up. Anybody can do this online and put in a license number. I'd rather have somebody come in and say, here's my license, I'm the person doing this business, this is how it's gonna be, and that way there's no hanky-panky. You know what I mean? Is that something we can look at?
I would look to the city manager on that. We can certainly look at that. I think that's not something we'd necessarily addressed in the ordinance, because you want to.
I'm addressing it now.
You'd want to allow some, what I recommend is you want to allow some flexibility as far as the administrative side of it.
Well, and that's my thing, is that the people that are checking people in and that are doing this, they're really versed in this, where some people might have questions when they're doing this online. What business do I fall under? Do I even need a license? If they come in and they talk to somebody, they show their license, they show, especially because we're talking about sober living homes or group homes or whatever we're calling them now. This is what kind of business that I'm going to be doing. Do I need a license for this, this, or this? Okay, the person standing there giving them the license is versed in this. And so then they give them whatever license they're gonna need. And then that way, their license, their driver's license is down on the form saying, this is the person that's signing up for this business. Because that goes back to the LLCs too that we talked about. Because each business, each single home should have an LLC. Not one LLC where there's 20 group homes listed under that LLC. Because that's where we're getting into trouble with the bad characters, as you said. So you have addressed that, correct? Because we talked about that.
Each individual location requires its own license.
Right. Each home.
Right.
So that's the whole thing, is that somebody can let everybody know that, and they know coming in, so there's no, I didn't know that, I didn't know how. The business license is gonna be so important, and who it's listed under. Who is opening that business? That will help PD when there's issues.
Can I ask for clarification? Councilmember Gillis, are you looking at new licenses? Or because if, with our business registration right now, they would move to a license, and it would be a yearly renewal of that license,
Right.
which would mean
We're
we've
gonna,
got
we're gonna change over all registrations to licenses.
two
correct?
licenses. But
I would
if
say
we have
either
them
or.
come in every year to renew, maybe what we could look at is, maybe if it's a brand-new license, we could check it out. But I don't have an answer for you right now, because it's not something I've
I
considered.
just think initial licenses is what I'm looking at
Your
right now.
initial.
Initial licenses, so we know who's operating businesses in our city. And they showed their license, so we know they have a legal license, especially with all the issues with the borders and stuff right now.
And that is a requirement to make sure that you have a license to conduct the business that you are operating in the city. So there would be a verification process, whether or not they're in person or online.
I think they should be in person. I think we should see these people in person. I think they should know that the city is watching everybody that's signing up, what they're doing, how they're doing it. I just think that's important.
There are provisions in the ordinance as well that if you provide fraudulent or dishonest information, that is reason to deny or revoke a license. So
Well,
I
I'm
don't know if
trying to
that part's
stop it
addressed.
before it gets to that point.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean,
Okay.
we're already down the line and that's happening, and then we've got to get back involved again. Let's try to prevent the fraud before it happens. Obviously, we have not done that in this city because we have, 167 homes in this city, 17 that are licensed from the state. That's it. And I'd like to know how many of the 167 have registrations. That's my homework that I've done. 167 of those homes in this city. So we haven't done our due diligence on that.
Right? Bill? And then Brandon? And then,
Is there a way to address this concern about a person who is required to have a license versus I don't know. I'm going to say we've got 1,200 businesses in the city. I don't know what that number is, but that sounds probably reasonable. I don't think it's reasonable for us to require 1,200 people to come in every year to turn in paperwork for their business registration.
I said initial.
No, I understand. So how do we, and you're targeting a very specific group.
To start with, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a way to lessen a 1,200 person visit to solve this problem without creating 1,190 others? Or
Well,
that math is way off, but.
I guess my recommendation would be that we want to apply the ordinance uniformly across the various categories of business.
Yeah.
And what we've stated in the ordinance is, if you are required to, otherwise, if you're an attorney, you need to have your bar license before you can conduct business in the city. If you're an accountant or CPA, you need to have that license. I assume we will have on the online form or in person, whichever direction we choose to go, an opportunity to attach a copy of your license, and that would be a criteria for issuing the license from the city.
Does that satisfy your, if I'm a group home company, whatever, and I have to attach my license that says I actually have the license from the state to do that with my application, does that suffice, not having to drag everybody in?
And Jared did say that he was shaking yes, that we could do that.
So now we get that verification without the Baskin and Robbins business owner to come in, or the Robex business owner. I mean, I'm not gonna rattle them all off, but
I'm mainly talking about group homes.
I know you are.
I'm talking about the illegal homes that we have in this city.
I'm 100% behind you on that. I'm just trying to find a way that we keep Mr. and Mrs. Baskin and
And
Robbins from
that's
having
fine
to
with
come
me.
in.
That's fine with me. I just want to make sure that we are in charge of the illegal homes that we are not in charge of now.
That is one of the areas we're addressing with the ordinance.
Yeah.
Whether it's in person or online, we will be verifying that they have the license to operate.
And then we can do that verification by having it physically attached. And is there a way to flag that so that that gets a set of eyes on it?
Here, hold it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Jared like he's just gonna talk.
Jared's coming up. Let Jared say something.
Sorry. But, you know what I'm saying? I think there's a way to solve the problem without dragging 1,200 people.
So the way the registration works today, we do have business classes, so the license will have the same. And then the expectation is that based on your business class, we will investigate, make sure you have the licensing attached appropriately, and follow up as necessary if that information's not there. So we'll be able to go by business class and look at that.
So before you issue it, you'll know, you'll have done the homework, you'll have.
That's correct.
Does that solve the problem? Because I'm thinking of my next door neighbor who's running, you know, his, you know, $10 car repair place. Does he have to go down to get a registration?
I think anybody that's going to get licensed should have to go down and get their license. If it's a company that has been in the city and they're just renewing, then they should be able to renew. They don't have to go in and necessarily do that. They could do that online. But anybody that is new in this area and wants to get a license, especially if it has to do with these sober living homes, should have to go in physically.
That's different. I'm talking about
I'm talking
non-sober.
about that.
I'm talking about non-sober living. That's what I'm trying to protect those people while holding the other ones accountable.
Can we do that, Rory?
Yeah,
Can
it's-
we say one for one and one for the other, or does it have to be across the board the same?
We have not addressed different categories of license in the ordinance because it is a ordinance of general applicability to business.
But we have required that if you need a license to operate, that you must provide proof of that.
Correct.
And that's the difference. So the Baskin and Robbins owner does not have to provide proof that they're Scoop approved. But if I'm gonna open a group home, I'm gonna have to get a license and prove it.
Correct. That, absolutely.
The state licenses you as well, so you're gonna have to show your state license.
That's what I'm
You
saying.
can't get licensed.
I don't wanna have to drag the other business owners down here to, because we've got I'm gonna say 165 of them or 170 of them. I don't wanna punish the other 1,000 people.
I would think you can't discriminate against one versus the other either.
But
That was my question.
that's what I'm saying, we don't need to drag them down here because those 170 have to provide, plus the attorneys and everybody else, they have to provide proof of their business license before they can get it. So do they have to physically come down here to do that? Or can they just submit a copy of it and they're gonna verify it?
You scan the document, you attach
Yeah.
it to the application, and you send it in.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, so.
But then, is that gonna be discriminating against sober living homes? Are they gonna get around that and say, well, if they did it that way, we should be able to too?
If the sober living home does not have the state license, then they won't be able to get our license.
The bad
You'll
ones.
know that it's illegal.
The bad ones won't even try to license. The bad ones might not even try to get on there to like go through the process.
Yeah, if I'm gonna skirt the law, I'm skirting it all the way.
I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
Well, they've been skirting.
I'm not gonna apply online or come in.
If you don't have your state license,
Yeah.
then one, you're not gonna get a city business license.
Yeah.
And then you'll be in violation of our ordinance,
just
and we'll
self-report.
take enforcement action for that.
And can I add, in addition to that, they're required to have the annual fire inspections, so there will also be that check in the process. Do they have their license? Are they registered or licensed with the city also and the state? So
But you gotta
just a
self-report.
second step, just checks and balances.
So we should be able to do then, with sober living, we should be able to say that they need to come in, is that what you're saying? And the other ones don't need to?
I would recommend that you apply the ordinance uniformly across all the business categories. So if you're gonna apply it to sober living, I would recommend you apply it to all the other categories, so as not to be discriminatory.
Sober living should not be under that. They should have to come in separately.
Well, let's see what we've got there. Do you think they should come in separately?
No, so I think that, I mean, they can do it online, we can make it either or, all businesses, not talking just targeting sober living. I don't wanna put any extra burden on any business that comes to Goodyear. I don't want White Castle to come walked in here and, any new business, distillery, all these are new businesses that are coming to Goodyear, they gotta do all the steps, and they're like, hey, but you gotta walk physically walk into City Hall and pick up a license. I think online is the way to go. If they want to come in and do a physical license, they can come and do a physical license. I think the bad actors that we're trying to target, they're not gonna come in or do it online. So, and I think we'll discover those. PD will probably discover those, and they'll get pulled in. So, I think bringing them in it's gonna hinder the good performers, not the people that are trying to skirt the law. So, I don't necessarily agree with that. And then, so yeah, I don't want to create any undue burden for all new businesses in Goodyear. And then the licensing, what licensing are we looking for, Jared? Is it like my estate attorney who runs an office out of her house? Does she need her bar license uploaded?
Right.
Or do I need my FINRA license 77, 66, and my insurance and stuff for my business uploaded?
I would think, if that's what's
Do I
required to operate
need-
your business, then yes, you need to upload.
I'm just curious what level of licensing are we looking for, so.
If your business requires some state, federal license to lawfully conduct the business and otherwise, we would require proof that you have that license, if that makes sense. If you're an attorney, the bar license.
Is that parity with other cities? Do other cities require you to upload your licenses for any and all specialties? Are we leading the charge on this, or is that normal business for everybody?
You know, I didn't actually look into the applications that other cities have, but that's something I can definitely look into.
Yeah, I don't want to be the first ones to put more burden on business. Every single year, you gotta upload and make sure you're up to whatever, everything, nothing's expired, making sure you're still in good standing, all those type of things that, I'm just curious to make sure we're not an outlier. So.
Well, again, this is a license generally that applies to business, though it's touching on certain categories like we've talked about, sober living homes, which we want to verify that they have their state licensing to lawfully operate in the city.
Yeah.
Since a number of them clearly are not.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we can't be discriminatory
I know,
in
yeah.
a business license program, so we need to apply the program uniformly.
Okay. I know what we're trying to get to, and we're targeting one industry, but I just want to make sure we're not going to put.
Protect the people,
I
Brian.
just want to make sure we're not putting an undue burden on the rest of the businesses.
Well,
So, because I think the people that are the bad actors in the community, they're not going to upload their licenses. They don't already have their licenses. So we have PD, you'd have to discover them, and then this is the mechanism we'd use to find them and then hold them accountable to it. But if they don't have a license to begin with, they're not gonna, they have to self-report.
if they don't have a license, they'll be in violation of the city ordinance, and that would
Yeah.
give us an enforcement
tool to go
for
after
these types
those
of businesses.
those groups. But the
we do-
people, yeah.
But we do need to have an ordinance that's non-discriminatory and that
Yeah.
can be applied uniformly. So it might be a slight burden on businesses to upload their documents with their renewal, and that's unfortunate. We'll try to make that as easy and seamless as possible for them.
Yeah, our different categories or things categorized, things like that. So but I want to make sure before we do that we're not the only city in Maricopa County or the state of Arizona that makes people do that, so I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that, so.
Okay, I get where we're trying to go, and that's that's laudable, because we want to get the bad actors out of here. We want them out. We do not want bad actors in our city, period. I mean, I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
We also don't want to be not business friendly. This is my law license here, isn't it beautiful? And until they get them printed out every year, I just get something emailed to me that I have to print off myself for my $505 a year, right, Rory? I don't have a problem uploading that. I don't have to do that in any other city. I've had one, including Peoria, Surprise, Phoenix, Glendale. I've never had to upload it. I just put my license number there, and then they can verify it for the bar. I mean, so whether you have documents uploaded or not, it doesn't give me heartache that way. It's fine. If it's your real estate license, you get that little real estate, take it out of your frame, stick it in there, your cosmetology license. Usually, most of this stuff is computerized, so the number probably would be able to allow our people to check to make sure it's still valid, because the real estate has a database, cosmetology has a database, I'm sure financial services has a database. If we just put that number there, it might be sufficient, because we don't want to be unbusiness friendly for the Baskin Robbins, those people. Get that. Now, for the bad actors, I want to do a little funky thing because I want to do what Vicki was saying, I'm one of those bad actors and I want to try to fudge the system. Well, if I'm a really good bad actor, I'm just going to make up a document and I'm just good, because these people, we had one next to us, these people are not new. They will just make up something and they'll attach it. So I think it's really important that we have the staff, I'm okay with online and you can attach or number, license number, because same thing, the state's gonna have a database of these. And then if it comes back as funky or a little wonky there, that should get turned over to be investigated and then turned over to police to see if there is a fraud, because then I think we're treating everyone the same. If I put a fraudulent number, they can contact me, make sure I put the right information, if it's not a typo or something, and then if I'm not responding, not giving them the right information, then that can be turned over for an enforcement action and the license is not given. So I think that keeps us business friendly, but it keeps those bad actors. We want to make sure that there's a trigger in our system to say, hey, LLC X, Y, and Z is, this is not right. This is a wrong number. This is a fraudulent number. Yeah, it doesn't exist, so that we can get law enforcement and go after those bad actors. And I think that's the goal here. So I'm okay with that type of process, whether it's type in a number or however to best do it. We want to make sure Baskin-Robbins, we're not getting those people out of there, or we don't want to get around that we are not business friendly. For the majority of the, thousands of businesses that we have that are good stewards in our community, but nobody wants the bad actors here. So I think that's really good, whoever it is. And I appreciate the changes you made. Those were my concerns with regard to the professionals who might be at home, like someone comes in here, they're an attorney. They just do one trial in our court. Do they really need a business license? Probably not. I'm a real estate person. I sell one house here, but I'm based in Gilbert. I appreciate those single transactions and how it was written. So you covered my concerns. I just want to make sure I agree with Councilmember Gillis that we need to make sure that we track those bad actors and we make sure that they don't get through.
And we talk about uploading documents. I don't think the ordinance necessarily calls about uploading documents. It talks about you have the license to conduct your business. So we will work with finance on what that verification process looks like and try to make it business friendly. And if you do submit fraudulent documents, the ordinance does call out that that's a reason for revocation or denial of the license, which of course, if you're conducting business at that point, you're in violation of the city ordinance and there would be enforcement actions.
And that could be a criminal charge too.
It can be, yes.
That's fraud right there. So,
It can be.
yeah, I say we go after, if someone does that, we go after people. If they're committing fraud on the city, go after them.
Did you want to add anything?
On this particular topic. The fact that we're even transitioning from registration to business licenses shows that we're addressing the whole sober living thing, because that's been a big deal. And realistically, I don't know that the clerk at the counter is going to be the gatekeeper we think. I mean, if we're uploading documents, they're just going to take it and upload it. So, but did you say we're not necessarily requiring them to provide a copy of their license?
The ordinance doesn't call for that. It requires you to have a license allowing you to conduct the business, which you're seeking the city license.
But they don't have to
Certainly, providing a copy of the license is probably a good way to do it. A license number that we can verify would equally be a good way to do it.
I think in view of the need to verify these state licenses, I think that's going to be critical that we get some type, either the number that we can verify or a copy of the actual license. So, and then that would be on us to follow through afterwards. But if we end up taking a copy, that's just what the clerk will do, realistically.
I would think you could get a printout of all the legal licenses that you could tie into, so when the number comes in, you can verify, is this fraud or is it a legitimate number? I would think the cooperation between us and the state that issues those licenses, you could confirm that. I would hope you could confirm that.
So,
Hold on one second, go ahead.
What I'm mentioning, business licenses have been around for decades, centuries, whatever. I had one in Washington. I had a small business, and I've had it forever. The cities around us, Brannon, have business licenses. Am I not correct on that, Roy?
Most of them do.
Most of them do. We are very few. Goodyear is like ancient when it comes to registration. Everybody has business licenses. I've never heard of a city that has not had a business license. That's what I was saying. My whole thing is, so it's on tape, is to protect the people of this city, period. I have talked to Ashley and Scott, who have been doing this for a long time before we ever all got involved. I wanted to listen to what they had to say. Laura and I both had to listen to what they had to say. I would like to know, are there going to be some more meetings on sober living? Are we going to have any more meetings, any more work sessions or whatever on sober living?
I have nothing on the schedule unless it's requested by mayor or 3 council members.
Because what I'm trying to bring out here is what I have got from them who have been doing this for a long time. I have pages of stuff from them who have been doing it, who we should be listening to. That's what we're here for. Not just to make decisions on our own, but to be listening to what the people are saying. These are people who have been doing it for 5 years. I have a lot of respect for Ashley and Scott both. My question is, why are they not here today? That's my question. They should be part of this so we could be talking to them. I don't want to just be the person asking these questions that are coming from things they've had to say. I want the people that know what they're doing sitting here so I can ask the questions of them. They're the ones that have been doing this. I'm interested. I want to know as their council member. That would answer a lot of questions for us. So I would like to say something right now. I think we should have another meeting, and I think Ashley and Scott, who've been doing this for 5 years, should be sitting here so we can ask them the questions. They are the voice of authority. Because this is becoming a political whatever. It's not political. We're protecting the people of this city.
And that's what he's talking about,
What?
getting a license to make sure they're licensed.
I'd like to have the people here that have been doing this business
To
and
be honest
ask,
with you, Vicki, I'm not sure it's necessary unless you've got others on here that think we have.
if they don't want to do it, fine. It's on tape that I said that's what I think.
Okay.
I think we should be acknowledging the people who have been working this for 5 years. We've just now gotten involved.
But that's why you're looking at a license, to catch those. that are-
Obviously, I brought the license thing
Okay,
up.
But that's what he's trying to do right now.
I get that. I said there's some questions I'd like to ask the people that have been doing this business, not just licenses. I brought the licenses up. I'd like to be asking the people who have been doing this business, that have been doing all these investigative whatever, I'd like to ask them some questions about this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the license. That's what we're trying to figure out right now, so, and why we're trying to solve that issue. The question I had is, so, and this is just getting into the weeds again, but I just want to make sure. So does every restaurant need a food handler's license uploaded for all their employees? Like every McDonald's,
No.
every restaurant? I'm just thinking all licenses. I'm just
Not-
trying to think what that would look like.
Not at the employee level, but I imagine if you're a restaurant, there is a county restaurant license.
I don't
that
know.
I would assume they would.
I know when
yes.
I worked at McDonald's, they wanted us to get a food handler's license.
Not
so
for
I'm
the
just curious
employee.
what
So
that would
that's
look like, so.
Not for the employee, but for the
Okay,
entity.
I'm just thinking of all
Yeah.
licenses in my mind that would, I'm
If-
trying to think of the worst case scenario.
Right,
that's all.
if you're running a bar, you need to upload your liquor license.
Liquor license,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, and food trucks, they're temporary, were they addressed in here?
It should fall under the casual
Is that
temporary,
casual?
unless they're in the same location week
Oh.
after week after week, and then they're gonna get beyond that casual type of use.
Okay. I think that addresses everything. I know what we're trying to get to, like I said, I'm just trying to think of any unintended consequences that we're trying to put burdens on other small businesses. Because small businesses are our lifeblood, so, but, okay, I think that answers my curiosity question on that, so I think we're good, as long as we can address the easiest way to put license information in, that's comparable to other cities, so, thank you.
Yes, Bill?
I know you're trying to do the one-size-fits-all ordinance, but we do call out the requirement that you must be licensed to conduct the business that you're gonna, however we say it. Is there any reason that we couldn't say, comma, and must provide a copy of said license in the ordinance?
No.
I
You
mean-
want a copy of the license, we could certainly do that.
That way
A
we're.
copy on file, yeah.
Yeah, that way we're covering the requirement for the license within the ordinance, even though Jared says, hey, we're gonna get a copy of it, we're gonna verify it, but at least we've got it in the ordinance, so that if it's not done, we've got, at least the requirement is in there, and then I think we've kind of solved that we call it out in the ordinance, that you got, if you're required to have a license, that you're required to provide it. Not just say, yeah, I have a license, but you have to provide a copy of it. No, you have to provide a copy of the license.
Being the skeptic I am, I would still suggest he verifies that that's.
Oh, 100%, but we at least put the wording in the ordinance itself.
Copy on file. We can do that.
That we at least put a little bit of strength behind that requirement, so we don't leave it to the accidental overlook or whatever from, as Laura said, the clerk that takes it in or whatever.
And I agree, it's a good point, but I still would want them to verify that is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not taking any of that away, but I'm just saying we're gonna put it up front that it's in the ordinance that you have to provide this license.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
To, however you guys word that, but,
We'll make that
I
change.
think that gets us to at least strengthen the requirement for the license. It gives Jared and his crew the strength to say, and I asked for this because it's in the ordinance, not because my boss said so. Kind of a scenario, and then I kind of think we've closed this loop up.
Is that, yes, go ahead.
I understand why. I think to Loretano's comment that the number, you can look it up. If you're licensed and you provide the number, then that should be just as good as the physical one. So I'm just trying to make it easy. I'm not sure what other cities do. The number, if I give you my insurance number, you can look it up. So I don't know if I need to print out a physical one and then upload it or all those kind of things. I don't know if that helps. I don't know if that changes anything or makes it harder or easier. I just want to make sure that if we're going to require a license, which we are, I mean, some of those could just be numbers you can look up, so.
But I'm suggesting that we request the actual license itself, simply because providing the number is, you have to say that you show that you got it. An ID card from the state bar.
That is my license.
That's what I'm saying.
That's all I get.
That's all we need. And if I own a restaurant, I'm gonna have a liquor license, and I'm gonna have probably a county health
license. yeah.
health license that allows me to operate a restaurant. Yeah, but you have them. You don't have a physical license to? Yeah, but you know where to get it. You can get it. And so, I mean, we're not talking about a tremendous amount of people, and I think that this gets us right to the middle, as opposed to, hey, 1,000 businesses have to come in here, to get their initial license, because we're trying to protect ourselves, or protect the community against the 170 bad ones.
Well, I think you got some consensus to include that. The only thing I would ask is, once it's implemented in July, I'd be curious just to see if you get any blowback from a physical copy as opposed to providing the number itself. Just curious that finance doesn't get any blowback on that. So, yeah, go ahead.
Two questions on that. First of all, the legislature last several years require or allowed people who were in the military, like the spouse military laws that went through, that Arizona has to be reciprocal for them. I'm not really sure if every state in the union has copies they can, so we need to make sure that we're not discriminating against spouses or dependents of military people when they changed all that law, if we're going to require
Good point.
hard copies. Also, are we going to have to update it every year? Because some licenses are for 2 years, some are for 3 years, some are only for 1 year. How are we going to make sure it's updated, that you do have one on file? Because I can put this one on file and I cannot do my CLE and I can just be peace out, I'm not doing it anymore, and it's no longer active. So, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, those are questions that I have for the military spouses and for, I don't know how long your license lasts or how they go, realtors might be a couple years, I don't know. So those are just thoughts.
May I make a recommendation? Or a suggestion that the language say proof of license, because if we say proof of license, that would allow us in our procedures to say, will require, depending on if there's a database that exists, that we can go out and we can see the active status of a license that shows us when it expires, then we could do that and just get the number. But in other cases where maybe there's not as strong a database available, we could ask for something to be uploaded, a document uploaded. So if we say proof of license instead of copy of license, that gives us a little bit more flexibility operationally.
That's a great suggestion.
Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Okay, has he gotten enough?
I think we're just going to put proof of license on file. That gives us flexibility. And there's no requirement that the license be from the state of Arizona. So it could, if you're licensed in New Jersey, but you're located here,
Okay,
that would be
hold on.
fine.
We've got something right here to.
Sorry, I think now we've resolved the sober living home, the licensing. I do have a couple other questions. The businesses that we listed are a very traditional approach. It's the Girl Scout cookie, the lemonade stands, but now we have a very much an online environment where people are buying and selling and things like that. So people have gotten very creative about using either apps or, whatever to engage in commerce. And so I just want to know if our process takes that into consideration. And then I have another question.
I think the fixed location addresses that.
Well, I mean, the world has changed since, probably since this original registration was written and is likely going to continue to change as people are more entrepreneurs and have online commerce.
The ordinance speaks about fixed locations for business. I'm not sure an app encompasses a fixed location.
And then if it's not a fixed location, then there should be no need for a license?
Correct.
Okay. I don't know if we need to mention that or not. I don't know. I mean, or just wait till it comes up. But again, the way people are conducting business has changed significantly. And then I had a question last week that I reached out to you, Rourke, was about the $5,000 threshold for the casual. And my concern was, would we then at some point be requiring somebody to show us their financial information? And if we have a threshold and we say a dollar amount, and I'm not sure why 5 and not 750 or 10 or 12, I mean, so we picked a dollar amount, but I don't think that we should be in the position of looking at people's financials to see if they're in compliance with that.
In the dollar amount is not a hard and fast threshold. It's in the example of, I think it talks about 2 days or less conducting sales of over $5,000. There's another. It's not a hard and fast threshold. It's adding to the definition of a casual business. So if you're selling $500 worth of goods, you're presumed to be falling into that casual business exception.
Okay.
But we're certainly
Because
not.
under the
We're not
definitions-
verifying.
Okay, because it
financials.
does say specifically, conduct within a city a calendar year is
Yeah.
less than 5,000. And so, again, I don't think we should be asking people for financial records or putting up something that we can enforce. So that was my concern about that.
Understood.
Okay.
She brings up a good point, the 5,000, the arbitrariness of that, and then if we do have a hard number in there and we don't want to rise this thing all the time, is there like an inflation rider on it or something that will, because 5,000 in 10 years from now might not be a lower number with inflation as opposed to in the future. So I don't know if there's something that we want to add in there that it goes up every year, or we just revise it every 5-10 years or something.
I'd probably recommend taking another look at it. I wouldn't want to put a CPI adjuster on that. That gets complicated as the years go by.
Okay.
And it's really just a guideline on defining the casual type business. It's not definitive.
Okay, I just wanted to, just looking at evergreen or looking at future, forward thinking of that, so, thank you.
Yeah, I think what'll happen in that case is if you have a truck that's unloading furniture every other week, you know, and the furniture is going for 10,000 a pop, then you go, wait a minute, this guy's way over the casual. That's how you're gonna find that. Otherwise, you're not gonna find any of that stuff. Yeah. All right, you got what you need?
I think we do.
All right, batter up. Here comes Justin. If you would, for the record, just go ahead and introduce yourself, listening, you know, on the internet. Please go ahead.
Very good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Justin Fair, Deputy City Manager. So we wanted to bring as a follow-up conversation to our budget work sessions, we wanted to provide more information regarding a few initiatives that were discussed. This evening, we'll walk through each of these initiatives as they are 3 different projects with 3 different funding requests in the City Manager's FY25 recommended budget. So as you'll see on the screen, there are 3 different discussion points. The traffic signal cameras, which will be led by Steve with our engineering team. Then PD will transition up and they will discuss the license plate readers as well as the real-time crime centers. So on these, one thing that we do ask is within each section, we will pause and forward for questions at the end of each section. And the reason for that is because they are 3 independent discussions. And one thing from previous conversations is they kind of blended into one another. So we really want to be sure and separate these and have individual discussions. And so at the end of each, we'll pause, allow for discussion before proceeding on. So with that, I will hand it off to Steve, who will take us through the first one.
All right, thank you, Justin. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our engineering traffic camera recording project. So this project is in support of our strategic plan goal under infrastructure. Specifically, the goal is to identify legally acceptable best practices for recording traffic cameras. So the first part is just that. It's putting together a policy and guideline for the recording. And additionally, as Justin mentioned, we did include a fiscal year 25 budget recommendation for the purchase of hardware and software to retain and manage the recordings, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. So what do they do? Well, we have existing cameras at each intersection today that we can use for recording. If you see the picture on the screen, it's in the top right there above the traffic signal. They are pan, tilt, zoom, or PTZ cameras. They're primarily used for viewing approaching traffic, but you can look in any direction, so they can pan, tilt, and zoom in any direction. And we can control these from the TMC remotely. So currently they're live feed, and we use them primarily to monitor traffic in real time. But with real-time monitoring, we can respond to incidents and monitor adjustments to signal timing, which that's beneficial, but it's not as advantageous as being able to record or view past recordings. So what would be the advantages of being able to record? So first, we'd be able to evaluate changes to signal timing. So we make a change, we have statistical feedback from the equipment and sensors today, but this would provide us visual feedback that doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be viewed live. Second, investigating complaints. This gives us an additional tool to evaluate a complaint. So if we know the date and time, we can take the time to fully investigate what happened, similar to the scenario Councilmember Stitt mentioned earlier in our presentation. Third, damage to equipment. We can investigate damage to equipment. Same concept. We can pull video of something that happened last night or yesterday. And we didn't have to witness it live, but we can perform a better investigation that way. Also, we can use this for training purposes. We can capture noteworthy incidents and put them in training videos for staff. And then finally, in the future, it's possible that any live feed and video we capture could be used to assist the police department in investigations. So what's the plan? As the strategic plan indicates, it's important for us to establish the rules by which we operate and use these recordings. Work to establish the policy and guideline is already underway, and as part of that effort, we have to determine what are the rules around retention and release of public records? What are the appropriate types of uses now and looking ahead in the future? And how do we address privacy concerns? For instance, what areas to black out? Once we have policy language completed, we would seek council approval, and if given such, would then move forward with the project to begin recording. And as I mentioned earlier, we already have the cameras, we have existing cameras that we'd use. So the supplemental I mentioned would be to purchase IT software and hardware to be able to record and store the footage. And so that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm available for any questions.
All right, where are we gonna start? Well, I think I saw that one first, go ahead. And then we'll work this side here,
All right.
and then back here, and I'm sure everybody's got a question.
So yeah, no, I appreciate this. So I know this is still emerging, so you're still working out all the details on how to retain, how to do all that stuff. So, but it could be, it sounds like it could be used in the future for, for the news media requests, a copy of an intersection at a certain crime or something like that that might have occurred there, or is that something we're looking to see? Would that be part of like a body camera type of request?
As part of the policy that we're working through in the guideline, we're addressing that, but essentially it would follow the state retention policies.
So it would kind of be similar to that. So a news outlet could request potentially this data, for example. And we don't know how long we retain this. Does this retain, we keeping it forever?
We're still working
So
out that
about
level of
too.
detail, yes.
Okay, and then, let's say a crime is committed in the intersection, a major accident, would police go back and review this data and then maybe add extra things that they didn't see before crime or charges to the incident?
In the future, any video that we capture could possibly be used by the police department.
Used in court and things like that? Used in court and things like that for?
I don't know that I know the specifics of that, but certainly any video that we capture could be used by the police department.
And other cities other cities already have this process already set up? Or are we one of the first?
Some of the other cities do have traffic camera recording set up currently, yes.
Okay, so we're not necessarily, we can look, see what else, benchmark, we can benchmark what's out there as well.
Correct.
And then in the future state, are we looking at partnering with our border cities to see, let's say, a traffic pursuit or something happens across jurisdictions? Can we partner with if they get the same software, Avondale, the crime goes into Avondale, are we looking to partner with our neighbors?
I'm going to jump in, and we're in the initial stages of satisfying the strategic plan initiative, which is coming up with the guidelines and a lot of that information. We did request the supplemental, so that if council does approve the plan, when we bring everything back, we get approval from council at that time, we'll have the funds this year instead of waiting another year. If it's not approved, then we wouldn't move forward. So a lot of the questions you're asking are part of the process that we'll be going through to formalize it, I guess is the best way.
Okay. Trying to think of anything other concerns I might have. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You?
On there? Okay, thank you very much. So the public knows this is going to end up being part of kind of the real-time crime. This is a piece of it.
It could potentially.
And Brandon, we went, did you get us to see Glendale's, how it works?
I didn't too, but I'm sure it's
Yeah, we probably should set up another tour for those that couldn't make the Glendale one, because it was very interesting, and those questions were, and we probably need to make sure that you guys, when you're developing your policies, talk to Glendale and the other ones that have it, because what they told us is that they have the ability to turn this over to officers if there is a scene, an active crime scene going on or a crime in progress. So the traffic division would turn over the control of the camera to their PD, who could track suspects. And it was very well done how it was done. And then they explained what they can do is if there is a pursuit, they can basically hand it off to the next jurisdiction down. So suspect X, Y, and Z is trying to flee the scene, they can follow them. For example, it would be here, it could be through, Buckeye to Goodyear to Avondale to Glendale. So it has that ability, and I think that's important, that's something that we look for to make sure that we keep, as we make our plans and everything, that we have that ability, because that really goes down to the public safety for the apprehension of the individual. I did ask Glenn, go ahead.
I do want to say that this could stand on its own, but we also have the conversation on the Real-Time Crime Center coming up. So there still needs to be some direction from council as to even if we move forward with any next steps on that. But yes, that's why we separated it, but you're right. There is that future opportunity if we go down this path, both paths.
And I don't think it's anything, you're not going to snap and it's going to be done, but I think you're laying the groundwork, which is really good for have these different pieces and seeing how it's like a puzzle can kind of connect. And then I asked Glendale whether they had any problems with the public saying, well, is there privacy rights here? And they said that they had no problems, and obviously Roy can correct me if I'm wrong, but since you're out in the public, there's no Fourth Amendment protection because you're out in the public, you're not going in someone's house.
Yeah, I think you have less of a privacy interest just of the recording itself, but there'll be certainly redactions that'll need to be made as far as identities and license plates and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So-
if you're not the person when it gets released, we
Right.
would redact those like we do our other tapes.
Correct.
Yeah, I think this is great, and I think you've got a great start here, and I'm excited to see how all the pieces fit together.
Go ahead, Councilmember Gillis.
Okay, so from our last meeting, I was under the impression that we had recording cameras up. Justin, you know our meeting from a year and a half ago when I asked for that, to protect the officers as well as the constituents. Then I found out, no, we don't, and we were under the impression that we did. So can you tell me, is this now that?
So the meeting that we had originally, a year and a half ago, was to discuss getting to
You and
this
I
point.
had,
Correct.
yes.
To discuss getting to this point. There are, with the solutions, the ability to record requires some technology that we
Right.
don't have in place today.
Right.
We thought we might, and that's when a year and a half ago, we had those discussions, was we thought that we had technology that we could repurpose, reuse to get ahead of this, and that's where the supplemental in the FY25 recommended budget is to
Right.
help cover those. We do have some, but we don't have it all, and that's the software that Steve had alluded to, as well as storage, because as you record the videos,
Storage,
you have to
right,
store them.
right.
So yes, a year and a half ago, we did intro the conversation and talk about that. We thought we had a quick path, but unfortunately, through Steve's team's work, we still needed the supplemental to support that.
Okay, so now we have that.
It's in the recommended budget, but first of all, we want to come back with a guideline and, actually meet the strategic plan initiative. So you guys are fully aware of what we'll be
What is
using this
going on.
for.
Right.
And how we're going to implement this and all of that. And if it still aligns with where the council wants to go, then we would have the money there to buy the software and to move forward with it. So we're taking this a step at a time.
Because this was the first thing that we wanted to do before the Real-Time Crime Center was ever involved in any of this, was this, so that we would protect the officers and constituents. And then we would go from there to real-time crime, so that these cameras would then tie in, Steve, correct, to the real-time crime, that's what we're talking about. So it wouldn't be a waste of money.
I believe the following presentations will discuss that a little bit, but it is possible.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure, so we're not buying two different units, okay? But these are first, these recordings, not license plate readers, but recordings.
Correct. These
Correct?
are using existing cameras that are already deployed by engineering
Right,
department.
okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Councilmember Stitt.
I have, we have three linked topics together tonight in this one presentation. Each of them we're holding up as, it's in the strategic plan. And each one of these in the plan talks about identifying or evaluating. None of it talks about buying anything. And I understand you've said the plan is to hold the money, because the budget is just a plan, right? So is to hold the money until we get the entire plan together and then move forward in one fell swoop, is that correct?
That is the goal, because we didn't want to have to wait until next budget year.
I get it.
To delay all of this, so.
Okay. So rarely do we approve a tentative budget with the caveat that we're not going to spend it without future approval. That's very rare. And I think we've got to kind of be on record with that. You know, as Councilmember Gillis said earlier, I want a recording to say that. I'm going to say I'm concerned about the vagueness of that reply. Well, we could possibly use these cameras for real-time crime. It doesn't make a drop of good for us to buy cameras if we cannot integrate them into what we think is going to be the future. So somebody please provide the assurance that this is absolutely going to be used if we go in that direction.
If you go in that direction with a real-time crime center, these cameras can be used for that. And if
Okay.
they
No, you're absolutely
absolutely can. But
Okay.
no decision has been made
it.
definitely on the real-time crime center.
I understand that. So if we say no to the real-time crime center
We can still
for
do this.
whatever reason, why would we need this?
It goes back to where it's actually a recording that they can go back to. If there's that traffic incident
Okay.
there, and they just want to go back and review it, then we have something to otherwise,
To do that.
it's just at that moment in time that cameras right now don't record.
Got
So
it.
we don't have the historical.
Okay, so I've dealt with this subject in multiple communities throughout the country. This and the license plate readers are very, very common in municipalities all over. The big issue is the legally acceptable best practice for recording. That is a huge issue because there are a lot of Big Brother kind of scenarios. Everything's being recorded. What are we doing? What's our legal basis for doing it, et cetera. And once an event occurs and you have a recording, all that is a look back into the past. There is nothing that will protect the community at that moment. Once the crime has been committed, it's already been committed. The protection for the community is we want to prevent the crime from happening. We want to have more cops on the street. We want to have better investigations that are stopping the coordinated effort by whatever bad guys there are, et cetera. That's the safety of the community. But the camera is only going to capture what has happened. So I think we've addressed the dual use. I'm fine with the caveat that we're going to wait and we're going to coordinate this. But I think the very first thing that we have to know is this legally accepted best practice. I think we absolutely have to know that because if we've got these cameras going and they're recording, we cannot have a scenario where there's somebody making a demand for a recording right now and we not have a legal basis to do that.
Absolutely agree.
And I think that's the message we have to make sure that our officers understand. You know, I know, Rourke, you guys spend a lot of time with Tony educating everybody on how this stuff can be used, et cetera. We'll have the exact same conversation, I think, with the license plate readers, but you've addressed my concerns on that, so thank you.
Who else? Vice Mayor?
So leaving the real-time crime center out of this discussion, you need these to help address the traffic problems.
Yes, this will be very helpful for us.
Okay. And then it also helps for us to handle the police investigations. We have accidents a lot, and then police can use that as a tool. And so that helps certainly with enforcement and things. I foresee that there's going to be a staffing request coming with this for the public records. So once we have this data, there's going to be we talked about having to add staff for the body cam. This is just gonna be just as much in demand, I'm sure. And we'll have to be prepared and staffed for that as well.
Good. Anything else? Continue.
So with that, I'll invite Interim Chief Miller as well as Deputy Chief Farrow up to take over the PD presentation on the license plate readers and the real-time crime center.
Okay.
So,
I'm just gonna do an introduction. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In a few moments, you'll listen to presentations from Deputy Chiefs Jeff Mercy and David Farrow. Both of these gentlemen have been involved in the research of the license plate reader that was referenced to earlier and the real-time crime center. They're involved with the the research of this, and they have established some possibilities that we can go with as a department to bring these programs to fruition. Both programs will position our police department to be in line with modern policing methods and certainly enhance public safety. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff Mercy.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, I'm Jeff Mercy, Deputy Chief of Police. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about license plate reader cameras. The department has been researching this technology and implementation for several years, as we have seen its successful use in other communities. In fiscal year 24, we had the opportunity to use RICO funding to support this initiative. Installation began in March of this year, and to date we have installed 9 cameras and have already seen the benefits. Because of the information provided by the cameras, officers have made 11 arrests and recovered 4 stolen vehicles. Cities using license plate readers have been growing both in the state and across the nation. The system we have chosen is proven to assist with investigations by providing officers with a tool to research vehicles and track their driving routes. Vehicles can be tracked using cameras within the city and other cameras throughout the valley, state, and nation. Currently, Goodyear is the only agency in the West Valley without a large amount of these cameras. Searches in the system not only find license plates, but officers can search for vehicle type, make, color, or even unique identifiers such as window decals and roof racks. In addition to NCIC hits, such as stolen vehicles, missing persons, etc., the software allows for officers and dispatchers to create alerts that can be used to flag vehicles of interest in an investigation. These mobile alerts can be made through text, email, and in a phone app. The department researched technology and purchased Flock Falcon cameras. One of the deciding factors for choosing Flock was the use of the vendor throughout the valley and especially the West Valley. This will assist with tracking vehicles as they travel through different cities. The Flock Falcon cameras take photos of the back of passing vehicles and do not provide a continuous video feed and do not capture the occupants of the vehicle. Since our first camera was installed on March 12th, we have had several success stories from alerts from our Flock cameras. One of the more recent incidents involved the white Jeep in this slide. This vehicle was stolen from a resident of Goodyear who watched the vehicle leave. An officer entered the plate into Flock, and because it had previously driven by one of our cameras, this photo was available and immediately distributed to officers. The vehicle was soon located and the suspect was taken into custody. The camera locations in Goodyear were identified by the department, and we worked with traffic engineering to coordinate placement using city-owned poles for installation. Phase 2 of the implementation, if approved by the council, will be an additional 25 cameras in FY25, along with ongoing costs for the FY24 purchased 16 cameras. $60,000 of RICO funding was used for the initial implementation, so there was no cost to the city. The use of these cameras are for investigative purposes, and they will be used with or without the implementation of a real-time crime center. Like any other resource available to officers, the department defined appropriate use of the cameras and provided training to staff. Ongoing training is also available through the Flock website. The system also provides audit capability, which allows supervisors and managers to ensure the Flock system is maximized for public safety. Before we transition the conversation to the Real-Time Crime Center, are there any questions?
Just a general question. How's the mechanics work? You have the flock camera that's taking a picture that it's mounted throughout the city in the pole. Does it, at that point, automatically send a text to somewhere who sends it out to the officers so they know where the last time it was spotted? How's the mechanics work?
Correct. They are cell phone cameras powered by solar and immediately send the pictures to the Flock system, which is not stored on site, but is in the cloud.
But is it?
And then the officers have an app on their phone,
Okay.
as well as the website on their mobile computers, and they can run partial license plates. If we get a description of a white four-door sedan that left a crime scene, they can search specific cameras for all vehicles that match that. Or if we get one letter of the license plate, we can narrow it down to those. If they identify a window sticker was also in the vehicle, that further will pare down the results they get.
Well, my question is if the flock camera picks it up, does it send a text to the officers in the area?
Correct,
To
for
say,
any
hey,
alert.
this has been identified at such an intersection to be aware of? So they're getting automatically this text showing up on their inside computer?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
That's how that works? Okay. Just curious on the mechanics of how quick it takes that information and transfers it to the officers in the area so they know, beware that something was just picked up over here.
Right. If there's an alert placed on a vehicle through NCIC or through the department, it will immediately send the text. We also have the ability then to go back into the system to search for those partial plates or vehicle descriptions to see if they've passed through.
Okay, interesting. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
This was, I have to apologize to Lynette and everybody. I did not get an opportunity to read this until late this afternoon, so no one got a heads up on any of my questions. I apologize for that. And I think for the first time since I've been on council, that may be a stretch, but for the first time in a very long time, I actually printed the council action report. So I could read this to try to figure out what these three presentations were all about and how they interacted with one another. My first surprise came in the summary when I see phase 1 of the proposed real-time crime center provide an overview of updating the city's traffic cameras, license plate readers, and phase 1. If we haven't studied the real-time crime center, how do we know how many phases we have and what we're in the first phase? And that just kind of started this snowball occurring. And then on the bottom of the first page, imagine my surprise when I find out that we've already purchased 16 license plate readers. I'm going to sound like Wally for a minute. That's the first I'm hearing of it. That was an absolute shock to me that we have already purchased 16 of these. So I'm trying to figure out if we've gotten a RICO report that said that it's in there.
We did bring up the purchase of the flock cameras at the budget work session. So Chief Miller did bring that up. And I do believe we send out RICO updates on a regular basis. Yep.
Yeah, I know we're supposed to get them on
required.
regular. Yeah, I know that too. And I cannot imagine in my wildest dream that I skipped over a license plate reader without having a discussion with anybody about it. I know it came up at the budget discussion. I thought it was a future discussion as we were going forward. So my surprise came in when I found out that we've already purchased 16 of them. And I think going to this type of technology, et cetera, is probably something that we should have been informed about earlier, much earlier on. And if we just did it in the last 6 months or so, then we haven't seen a RICO report So I don't know when the last one was and how it was in there. So I was a little shocked by that, by the whole license plate reader thing. I was then pleased to see that we have at least defined the appropriate use of that in policy, and especially now that they're actively in service. And the staff report talks about auditing. The department safeguards appropriate use through training and audits. So who does the audit? And is it post-event or is it a proactive audit?
Mr. Mayor, council members, both of those are planned. We've put some restrictions in the policy for when searches or alerts, can be used with the license plate readers. So if we're setting up an alert, the system allows us to do that simply for the officer in that beat, for the department-wide, or they can go throughout the Flock system for whoever we've approved to share our cameras with. And so we've defined what level of crime they have to be to go through the department or investigation, and what level and a lieutenant or watch commander has to approve anything that is going outside of the City of Goodyear employees. And then as far as auditing the uses, no use of an alert entry or a search can be done without an officer putting in the investigative purpose for that search, and those will be audited on a regular basis by our internal affairs unit.
Okay, so we are proactively looking at that, because what I'm trying to be very mindful of is, and I know we don't have them, but a bad cop who is chasing down a girlfriend.
Yes, sir.
Or a boyfriend, or both, puts in a license plate trying to find somebody that they're looking for under kind of false pretenses. And that's the worst case scenario of this kind of technology as we go forward. So I want to make sure that we have that safeguard in place. And I think perhaps we've got to operationalize or put in policy that whatever that frequency is, because the presentation here says audit capability, which does not tell me that it's an actual procedure. It just says we can if we want to.
Understand.
So if we are actually doing it and we have it in a time frame, I'd like to get follow-up information on how frequently we're doing that. This is a great technology for public safety. It is also a horrible technology for privacy invasion. And I think we have to be very, very careful, again, that teeter-totter that we have to stand on to make sure that we're doing both. Because everywhere we go, there's bad actors, there's bad council people, there's bad cops, there's bad firefighters, there's bad city employee. I mean, there's bad people everywhere, and maybe I'm one of them, I don't know. But I'm just saying.
Speak for yourself.
I'm just saying. I think we've got to be very, very cautious of that. So my request tonight is audit capability. Tell me what it is and the policy. And then second, when were we notified besides that work, besides 4 weeks ago on the thing about purchasing these cameras? And then when was the last RICO report? So we know, we're supposed to know how this money's being spent. And I thought, for a minute this afternoon, I thought that council had to approve RICO, and then I kind of had a realization that that wasn't the case. So came down the ledge off of that one. But I'd like to know that, I'd like to get that other information followed up on. But again, I think we've got to be really cautious about how we're talking about this in the community and the dedicated purposes and how we're doing it through. Because I think there's probably no greater system. I know people were appalled when Litchfield Park put them in there. They've got like 5 entrances to the walls of Litchfield Park, and people were out of their mind over it. But I think it's probably, like, I would suggest it to some of our gated communities. Like, you just put these things in, you can send those guards home. You know, I mean, I think there's a really good place for it. But we don't have that capability, and we're 198 square miles, so we've got to be careful on how we're employing it from a policy perspective. But that's it.
I can appreciate your point, and I think you gotta make sure you have your checks and balances in there, but if you can stop just one kidnapping or one of those or anything of that nature, I think it's worth its weight in gold. And I understand the privacy issue, but there's a lot of things going on out there that these cameras, if in the right place, can stop. Just gotta make sure you got the checks and balances, like he says, that it's not abuse. Go ahead, Councilman Gill.
100% agree with the mayor. I think that this is about protecting the people. I think we have to remember that because that's who we work for. And I think it's about protecting the police as well, because the police are out there doing this job. And I think we need to make sure that you're safe as well as the constituents are safe. And this gives us that to protect that. So I agree 100%. Thank you for bringing this to us and making it clear this time. Thank you.
Sherry?
First, to our citizens listening, what is RICO? We've talked about RICO funding. Could you just give the little thumbnail of what RICO is so people know what that money is?
RICO is from asset forfeitures of racketeering. That's what the R stands for. I can't remember the rest of it.
I sell drugs, you put me
Right.
in jail, you take the car I sold drugs in my bank account
Yes, ma'am.
and give it to the cities who can use it for law enforcement.
Correct.
Thumbnail sketch?
Yes.
Okay, just because people might hear those and not know, well, where's this pot of RICO money the city has? So, I appreciate this. This is actually for people who don't know a rather older technology. This has been at least 20 years that different methods of these have been out. I remember back east, they used to use them to get people with traffic tickets, you know, because you'd have all those, like in New York and stuff, you'd have $5,000 worth of traffic tickets and they'd know who to boot because they'd run the license plate. So this is a proven technology. So when the privacy concerns come up, I did like just a search today just to see, you know, and there's only 16 states that have laws against these, at least that's what my research was when I looked out. Most of them, not a problem. And what I found was that there's no constitutional problem because basically there's no Fourth Amendment issue here, a privacy issue, because you have no right to privacy when you're just driving out there and your license plate is out there. You know, you as an officer can get behind Bill here and start running his plate. Who will be at the stoplight because traffic's gonna stop him. So I want to let people know that we are actually going above and beyond. You have reasonable searches and seizures. You can't go into your house, you can't go into your garage, but if you're out driving, you know, that's permissible. So I want people to know this isn't, you know, Big Brother. This is actually just you're out there, you're putting yourself out there. You've put a lot of policies here that I think are very, very good. You put a lot of checks and balances that I think are very, very good. The fact that this can stop, and when we get this all online and with our neighbors, and you have an Amber Alert, you can find, you know, where we see this plate XYZ white Ford Bronco, for example, you know, we could pass that along, and if it came into Goodyear, our officers would know is suspect armed and dangerous in this car. We have officer safety. They can clear the area, traffic stop, public safety. So I think that the positives here are actually very, very good. And from my experience, that if an officer starts going in there and looking up the girlfriend, there's the NCIS, the CJIS, all those things, when the officers are trained, they have to sign off that I will not use that for personal use. Bad things happen.
So it's never happened.
Well, you are not an officer for very long if you do that. Am I correct?
That's correct.
You are not on the Brady list, you are on the unemployment list.
Correct.
So I think that's what's really important, that there are, so the public knows we have safeguards for this. This isn't big, this is going to make our people safer. You get carjacked, you get out of your car, you call the police, this is my license plate. They're gonna be able to locate your car, have a better shot of locating your car, so you can get that car back in some sort of reasonable condition. If people, you know, your loved one is in a car or something, a crime occurs, there's just so many ways that this has more upsides and downsides. And See, when you say real-time crime, I see it all as one big package with a bow. I have trouble differentiating because I think the goal is to get it all together and have the officers using this technology for their safety and for our community safety. So I am a big proponent of this, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, the way of the future is technology, and, you know, we're all adjusting to it, and with it comes a lot of challenges, ethics, and things like that. So, under the traffic cameras, we talked about we needed to have the best legal practices and to do the best things. Now we've got these license plate readers, and I know that we have training and things like that. I think what makes this different is that we have a third-party company now that has information. So how is that addressed?
The information is all owned by Goodyear, PD. And so when Flock, that company, we have agreements with them. They don't use any of that. We have to give permission for any of this information or data that we own to be shared with anyone else. For example, we've shared our cameras with Surprise, with Litchfield, well, with Avondale Police, with Buckeye, who also have cameras. But the data is physically owned for the time that it's stored by Goodyear. Does that answer your question?
Well, I think Justin.
Justin have something
has
to
something
add?
here. he
Yes,
wants
and
to
I
add.
just wanted to expand on that. With any cloud provider, and this one in particular, we do look at them and perform a security risk assessment from the security side to ensure that they're doing their due diligence around security as well and protecting that data. So with this vendor, I look back for Mike to verify as well, but we have looked at them as a vendor to ensure that they're following security best practices to protect our data, even though it's in their cloud.
Okay, so it's our data, they're not storing it?
They're storing it in their cloud, but it's protected.
They
and
can't
it's
use
our-
it?
Correct.
They can't access it?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Well, the data itself is in their cloud, but and I'll actually kind of look at PD to kind of expand, because I know there's potential for sharing, and then that's when I'll look for kind of your guidance on how they share that. But I don't believe that they would go in and explicitly access our data for their purposes, if that helps clarify that.
Yeah. I'd say there's an incident and TMZ maybe wants to get the footage. You know, can they approach Flock and say, we want that footage because a celebrity was involved and we want to do an expose?
And my understanding is none of that can be shared without our permission,
Okay,
even with other law enforcement agencies.
all right. Can we verify that, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Brandon, did you?
And I guess to that vein, I mean, we would black things out. We would protect, if we could, this example, you can't, it's only the license plate number really and the make and model of the car. But we would try to redact anything that was pertinent.
Correct,
To the
which
privacy.
should just be the license plate.
Yeah. So, and then my higher level question, or different questions were just for the public, so they know, this is not a red light ticket machine, this isn't a speeding ticket machine.
That's
Just
correct.
for the public, so we're not, the Goodyear is not doing that. And then to your point, it's the level of crime that will notify the officers. So we put in our criteria for the level of crime that we're looking for to activate it. So if it's warrants or whatever the level of crime that we're trying to
Right,
be tipped off on.
even investigative purposes. So we may have investigative leads. We may have, in this case that was in the presentation, we have the victim's vehicle in that case. So the crime was committed by somebody else. We're finding her vehicle so that we can better investigate and get that
investigation.
back.
Okay. No, I see a lot of power in this, but to your point, just making sure that figuring out the privacy and all the different procedures and policies that we're already looking into. So, and then this is only gonna be on our city property. I assume the I-10 would be they would just go off all the time. So we're not putting something on the I-10 necessarily.
Correct. We will not be
Is that
putting any on the
That's not our
freeway.
jurisdiction. Would it be?
But we would, but
Right next to the toll booths.
I believe Arizona Department of Transportation is not allowing any of these on the freeway. We're not even asking. We want these on our arterial roads
Yeah.
So that we can collect information on the people who are driving on our streets committing the crimes at our
Yeah.
locations. And to that point, if I could add one more thing, Councilmember Stipp mentioned HOAs getting these, and that is another benefit of the Flock system. The first 5 cameras in Goodyear were installed by Lowe's in their parking lot, and we are the ones who have the agency access to those cameras. So HOAs can also purchase those.
They requested them, or
Lowe's
purchased them?
Lowe's purchased them on their own, installed them before we had installed ours. I happened to be shopping at Lowe's and went, hey, there's one of the cameras. And so we followed up with them, and they had purchased 5 of them.
Do you have access to that camera? Did they give you
Yes,
access to them?
that data-
Were they using it for their own purpose first? And then-
Both.
Okay.
So they own that data, but they can then share that data with us for our investigative purposes. So they have their own loss prevention,
Yeah.
who looks into their cases, and they cooperate and co-investigate with us.
So that's interesting, the private industries could be putting up without us even really realizing it, or without permission, or anything, it's not private property, so.
Right.
Okay. I'm thinking of like users of things that come, like, I'm sure Bucky's gonna be highly popular, so there'll be a lot of
Yes, sir.
license plates going there, so. But
And-
different locations that'll be throughout the city, so. Exactly, 100,000 a week, exactly. So-
To go back to a previous question
Yeah.
that you had asked, as far as the intersection recording cameras, we actually have permission from Surprise Police Department. We have access to 74 of their intersection cameras
Oh.
through the Flock website. So any of our officers can access those on their, the mobile app at this point.
Yeah, it seems very comprehensive, so.
It is
All right.
possible.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, we good? You have another, you're continued, right? Keep going.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is David Farrow, Deputy Chief with the Goodyear Police Department. I am here to talk to you today about the concept of the,
It doesn't shut off.
Oh, okay.
It keeps trying to shut it off.
What's that?
I'm here to talk to you tonight about the concept of the Real-Time Crime Center. As you're well aware, one of the strategic plan goals for fiscal year '25 is a safe and vibrant community. And one of the subsets of that goal talks about the study and evaluation of the creation of a real-time crime center. If you dig even a little deeper, you have the guiding principles for the strategic plan, and one of the things that really hits home for me is it talks about promoting public safety services, community relationships, and innovative programs to assist the community, which I think this really hits home here. As we move along, when we talk about a real-time crime center, I know that there's been discussion tonight, everybody, or most of you have seen in some form or fashion what a real-time crime center looks like. And we have a photograph up here of a very well-developed real-time crime center with the video walls. And they come in stages. So in essence, it shows you what a real-time crime center could be. But essentially, it's a hub for public safety information. It's where information can be synthesized and assist officers in investigations. Some of the components that could be in there in the multiple data feeds, you see computer-aided dispatch, automated vehicle locations, license plate recognition, which we've been discussing this evening, traffic cameras, which we've discussed this evening. You also have the ability to throw in live stream body-worn camera footage, drone footage, and information from our community partners. As Deputy Chief Mercy alluded to, Lowe's has some cameras that are inside the city. Schools, other retailers, HOAs, which have been discussed, they all have the ability to go out and purchase cameras on their own, which could then be integrated into what it is that we're looking to do. Now, keep in mind, and I think Deputy Chief Mercy alluded to it a little bit, these types of cameras, it doesn't just give us the option of going in and taking what we want. There has to be an agreement. There has to be an intergovernmental agreement with certain partners, but we just can't go in and get it. There are some privacy rights there, and they have to share that information with us. So what this does is it provides layered mapping and video feeds to manage real-time data. It allows for multi-agency coordination. These types of systems contribute to officer and community safety by utilizing available technology and effectively managing risk. Also important is that they support crime reduction and improve clearance rates by reducing response times and providing post-incident intelligence. I'd like to paint a picture for you, if I could, with some of this information that we have up here. Deputy Chief Mercy alluded to the white Jeep that you saw in there with the black top, and Councilmember Loretano, you even mentioned something to the effect of a carjacking. So that vehicle was involved in a carjacking. That was the victim of a carjacking in our city. It happened up near Estrella in the I-10, and the officers were called and they were dispatched to it. But as these things typically happen, by the time we responded, the vehicle was gone. And we didn't have much information about where it had gone at that point. One of our officers was able to thankfully locate the vehicle in a neighborhood within about 5 minutes, but the offender had already fled on foot. So now we have some neighborhoods that we have to tie down, and we're in the neighborhood. We're blocked basically by I-10, Bullard, Van Buren, and Estrella. So there's a lot of retail area, there's a lot of residential area, and we have somebody off on foot that just committed a carjacking. So we're going to try and find them. Any and all of these data points would be crucial for us in trying to make this arrest. Now, as Deputy Chief Mercy alluded to, we did make an arrest about an hour and a half to 2 hours later. And we had our people that were tired, we had our canines that were tired, we had an aircraft that was in the area that had to leave and go refuel. If we had all of these things working in concert with one another, we would have been able to reduce our manpower on the ground, and we more than likely would have been able to come up with this offender a little bit quicker. And the reason I say that is because what ultimately led to their arrest was one of our officers happening upon a house that had a Ring doorbell camera. The homeowner offered to share that video with us about an hour and a half after this had happened. And we saw the offender go into a home. We were able to shrink down the perimeter, lock down that home, and take this person into custody. Had we had some of these tools available, we would have been able to shrink our perimeter quickly by, say, utilizing the intersection cameras we could 4-point it, and we know that this person didn't get out of this area. We could live stream our drone camera footage into a real-time crime center. We would have the ability to look at information from in the neighborhood and look at particular contacts and maybe somebody that we know that we're looking for. And we could narrow that stuff down a little bit quicker. So all of those things do play well together. A couple other, I'll just give you one more quick story about something that's happened in Goodyear where some of this stuff would be able to help us out. We had a call of a man walking down Estrella with a long gun. And that's how it was reported to us. So if you imagine, we had a significant response with officers, utilizing all these data points that we talk about here and getting cameras and eyes on before officers even arrive. It starts to de-escalate the situation before it ever even happens, which would have been a good thing here because it turns out that the gentleman was just a gentleman walking down the street with an umbrella that somebody thought was a long gun. So we hear stories about this across the country all the time where people misidentify items that they think to be something different. So this really helps to protect the officers. It protects the safety of the community as well as everybody involved. So I just wanted to take a minute to paint those pictures for you. As we move forward, so knowing that one of the items in the fiscal year budget, in the recommended budget was, and the strategic plan was to talk about the study and evaluation of a real-time crime center. The department as a whole, we took some initiative and we kind of tried to jumpstart this process. So what we've done over the last several months is we've spoken to a number of real-time crime utilizing agencies about their centers, about what their best practices are, and about any recommendations that we would have as we look to move forward in this process. You can see some of the ones that we talked to, a number of Valley agencies, and we talked to some from outside the states. The consistent recommendation from all of these agencies was to start small and spend your money on that small start, as opposed to bringing in a consultant to tell you what we think or we already know we should be doing. It's fiscally responsible to not spend that money where we don't need it. So what we've tried to do is get ahead of this and do that research ourselves and have those conversations and ask questions like, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? How would you start? Staffing plans, equipment, technology, And they basically said the best thing that you could do is start small and figure out what happens with your agency, how does it work with your agency, and how do you utilize this technology and equipment. An incremental implementation, if you will. Start small, analyze, see what's going on, see where you can do things a little bit differently, see where you can do things a little bit better, and then move forward into the next step. Councilmember Stipp, I believe you asked earlier about phases and how many phases there are to a real-time crime center. Just to give you the information from the National Real-Time Crime Center Association, they typically talk about it being a 5-phase implementation. And we are talking about phase number 1. One of the other things that we did learn from the different agencies, and this is kind of a little fun fact, is that most agencies that have a real-time crime center up and running in some form or fashion see about a 10% reduction in calls for service that they need to send officers physically to respond to, which obviously leaves more time for us to be available on patrol, to cover your partners, and increases your officer safety to a certain degree. As we've continued to move forward, as we've talked about this and we've done our research, we talked to basically every department within the city that was going to have some kind of a stake in the development of a real-time crime center. We've met and counseled with information technology, engineering, facilities, municipal security, telecommunications, and the fire department. Because what I would like to point out, one thing is that while this is being driven as an idea by the police department, our partners in the fire department are going to be very important in this as well. And I really think that this is a public safety tool, which then affects the police department, the fire department, as well as the community as a whole. So knowing that the strategic goal is once again coming, we tried to get ahead of this and have these conversations with all of our stakeholders and all of our partners within the city. So just to kind of recap what we got from doing our research and having these conversations and talking with all these other agencies is the driving principle is to start small. Evaluate your needs as you move forward. Think about what it is that will work well for your department. It's a crawl, walk, run approach, and that's exactly what we believe would be the best way to go about doing this. Starting small, we talk about technology needs, the size and scope. Identify a location, which we believe we have done. We would talk about grant funding to supplement city dollars as we continue to talk about the scope and the scale of this project. We're making every effort to be fiscally responsible as we do this research and to talk about the things that we may or may not need or where we would like to go down the road. So if approved, we would like to move forward into the implementation phase on a small scale and start to bring this to the city of Goodyear. We would continue to assess the value of the Real-Time Crime Center and come back to council on a frequent basis with reports and recommendations for the future.
Councilmember Gillis?
When I went to the Real-Time Crime Center in Glendale, and this was over a year and a half ago, I know that I talked to a woman there that was pretty versed on this and pretty interested in fact, she runs it there basically. And she had said she would help us whenever we were ready to go with it. And she said that the smallest you could go is one person, that one person, you could start in a small building with one person. Is that how you look at it? Because that's what she told me in the beginning.
What we've learned is that, yes, you can start small, and that no two centers are alike. It's kind of like snowflakes, right? You'll never find two that are exactly the same. What we need to get guidance from you guys on, and from the mayor and the council and city management is budget, scope, that kind of stuff, and we could make it fit. Bless you.
But is that how you anticipate starting this, is with one person?
Yes, starting on a small scale, yes.
Mm-hmm. And kind of tying into this other stuff that we're using, basically, the cameras that we're putting up now and the stuff that we're doing.
That's correct.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
You're on.
He answered.
Huh?
He answered.
Okay, so that's what you're thinking.
Yes, our thoughts are to start small and to move into this as we continue to learn.
Okay.
And assess.
I'm all about the Real-Time Crime Center. I was about a year and a half ago when I saw it. I think it's an awesome thing to do and for a city to have. It's a big deal to have it in your city. I think it's great for law enforcement and fire. I think it's the top of the line, and I think we should have it. It's a matter of when and how much it's going to cost.
Yes.
You agree? Bill? Then you, then you. Go around the horn here. Go ahead, Bill.
I think my expectation was study and evaluate the creation would result in a report of some sort that is much more detailed than 5 slides. And I think I need to see that before I'm going to green light moving forward on it. I agree conceptually, 100%, this is the direction I want to go. But I think we have to look at, well, first of all, if there's 5 phases recommended from the Real-Time Crime Center Association of America or whatever, I'd like to know what they are. Tell me what those 5 phases are. Tell me what this whole thing is. Tell me what your research showed. Tell me what is happening in Scottsdale, Glendale, Tempe. What is Mesa doing? What is Phoenix doing? I know they're both exploring it. Where are they at? How is Glendale, California set? How is Fort? Show me all the comparison. Don't just say, hey, we need it and it's really good, so we're going to do it. It's really cool. I need to know that when I see study and evaluate, that's what my expectation is I'm going to get a package that I can actually make a very well-informed decision, and I'm not making it emotionally, or I'm not making it based on my gut, which says this is a really good thing. I don't think that my gut is wrong, but I also believe that we owe the residents of this community that we've done due diligence in moving forward. I think we have that responsibility, because quite frankly, we can say, yes, I want to start small. You're going to tie up somebody. They're only going to work for a few hours of the day. Then it's going to be unstaffed, or we're going to tie up 3 people, but we're not going to do it 7 days a week or whatever. And once this fire starts, we are not going to be able to turn it off. This is exactly like We Ride on a much smaller scale. And we all knew that once we started that program, there was going to be no turning it off, and there was going to be a greater demand for it. This is exactly the same thing, except we're probably talking about an expense that is going to exceed that, either in staffing and location. What's the option? So we're going to start small, so that means it's going to be in here, and then we envision growing to here, and then we envision growing to here. What is happening? Tell me the plan on where we go. One of the slides that came up, you talked about live streaming body-worn cameras. Do we do that? Do you guys live stream that?
We don't currently.
So
It's an option that we're expanding upon here
yeah,
shortly.
so it shows up here as, well, we're live streaming body-worn cams. Well, we're not even doing it. Now, it's a capability, which I get, but who are we live streaming it to? Because now we get into redaction, we get into all the, I'm going to look at Rourke, we get into all of that. And once we live stream it, we know that it goes into the world, so somebody's going to be able to pick up on that, and who else is getting access to it? So answer that question for me, and then tell me that we're okay legally there, because it's a great idea, but I don't want to find out a year from now that I've got a $3 million lawsuit because someone's kid was shown on ABC 15 News. So I get the excitement of it, but again, the whole point was to study and evaluate it. Please show me the study. We made, she's not here, we made Guyleen sit here tonight after a year telling me about the library. It's not going to cost us a dime other than to put another 20,000 books available, but it's not going to cost us any more money. The IGA is not going to change. Nothing, well, I shouldn't say it's not going to change, but we made her go through a year-long study on expanding the library when intuitively, I could tell you, based on what has happened in the last year, the library is very popular. I hear from people, I see it, but we made her go through a year-long study. I'm not saying we need to bring a consultant in, because I think you guys probably did the work. So now I'm gonna turn into my 25-year-old, show me the receipts. That's all. That's all I want to see. Talk about expectation setting. Chief, I think your second example was a better example than your first one of how a real crime center works. If a stolen vehicle ended up in a neighborhood, I don't believe the expectation is we're going to have cameras in the neighborhoods. So, and I think we have to be very clear to the public listening to that, is the expectation is we are not putting cameras up in the neighborhoods. So if that car gets dumped in my next door neighbor, too bad, so sad. All you're going to see is probably the light at Falcon and Indian School, and that's the last time you're going to see that vehicle.
Correct, I think I understood that
right.
the doorbell, if the residents give us access to.
That's different.
Yeah, that would be the neighborhood, but
That-
we're not setting up cameras in the neighborhood.
Correct, but other than that Ring camera, which we stumbled upon, good police work, stumbled upon it, Real-Time Crime Center would not have been impacted by that first example.
There are options where we can solicit and we can talk to people in the communities, and we can set up a program where they would offer us access to their cameras on a need-to-know basis.
Sure.
Not just being able to go in and take a look. But one thing we would be able to do then is look at every single camera that's in the area, to include personal owned ones that they've given us access to.
You've got access to, yeah.
And we'd be able to, there was one that we saw in the neighborhood because she approached us. I'm sure there's 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 more in the neighborhood that could have been of use.
But I think when we talk about examples, and for anybody who listens to this conversation, and this one and the license plate reader and the other cameras is a very high profile discussion, I think we have to be very clear about where we intend to put cameras and how we intend to make those access points. And if I hadn't raised the question, somebody could have assumed, and we all know what happens there, that cameras were going to be everywhere, and we were going to turn the city into a camera popular area. And I'm fairly certain that that's not the case. Again, I'm going to harp on the strategic plan piece, study and evaluate, and in the last page of the staff report, it says phase 1 implementation to include. Are we implementing it or are we studying it? Because the staff report tells me we're doing something, and that is not what I thought the plan was.
We will provide study information for you, and then if you are good, we can go forward with phase 1.
Yeah, it's going to, for me anyway, and I think we owe the public and we owe ourselves, it's got to be a good staff analysis. It can't be like this. It can't be 5 slides that have some bullet points on it. It's got to be detailed. We've got to know what the comparables are. We've got to know what they're spending. We have to know what we're saying yes to back to the $1.1 billion worth of future projects. I know we're trying to be economical about it, but I don't want to do this if we're going to only do it halfway. If we're going to do a real-time crime center and we want it to be effective and we want it, I absolutely believe we can reduce unnecessary officer time. I believe that this improves officer safety. I mean, I have no question about the viability of it. But let's not make it a 4-day-a-week thing from 8 to 5. What is the real cost going to be? What are we really looking at? Then we can make a really informed decision, and we can put it up against all the rest of the things that we've got. You good?
Sherry?
Okay, I guess I had a little bit of different take on some of the comments you made. My take on what today is that we're interested in doing it, so we're going to go back and get the details. If we say this is our direction, you can let me know if this is how I read everything. If this is our direction, and if this is our direction with the other 2 components, then you were gonna come back with the funding, the scheduling, and all the details that Councilmember Stipp was talking about.
Yes, and we did request funding in the budget. So if things continue to move forward and council's good with our approach, then we'll be able to spend the money.
But
this-
that's just a placeholder right now in case,
This
if
is-
we said no, then that would be different.
Yes, and we didn't want to wait another year. They've done a lot of work so far on this. So we can put that information together, bring it back to council, and make sure everyone's comfortable with that before we spend any money on it. But instead of waiting another year and continuing the process and waiting 2-3 years to start, that was our approach.
Because if we would've said, nah, we're not interested, it just would've kind of died a death today. Now, the other question, some of the examples that were used, the live streaming, although there's the capability to do that, like you said, we're not doing that right now, correct?
No, we don't physically have the capability with our current camera setup. This would be an upgrade through our Axon body-worn cameras that would allow us to do that.
And live streaming doesn't mean going to the public live, it just means feeding into the Real Crime Time Center. I don't want them to think, ABC can.
It comes
not-
back through a secure link that we can view at the police department. It's
So
not
then-
live streamed to the city, to the community.
So then if I'm ABC News, blah, 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 and I want to get whatever happened for this incident, then I would, same thing, make my request, and you could redact as appropriate and as needed for that.
That's correct, yeah, it would be the same process.
And then the other part, we were talking a little bit about the incident in the neighborhood. How I read it, or what I got from you guys, was that this real-time crime center would have helped a perimeter. You would have been able to look at intersection X, Y, Z, kind of on 4 corners, and make sure that the suspect had not left the perimeter area to narrow down. We're not putting traffic cameras, as Councilmember Stipp, or cameras in the neighborhoods, but it would basically help us close that circumference down to locate where officers on the street would locate the individual.
Yeah, in that particular example that we were talking about, yes, being able to close the perimeter by utilizing existing traffic cameras that are already up, nothing new that we're talking about putting in. Being able to shrink that, being able to take footage, say from a drone, and being able to overlay that over a map over the neighborhood and see where, all the different residences are, see where the available cameras are that people have suggested that we could look at if needed, they have made available to us. And just being able to see all that stuff on a multi-layered map and being able to bring things together a little bit quicker.
And the Ring camera, for people listening, that's voluntary, if someone wants to give it to you. I've had actually someone, because I have a Ring camera, I'm at a cul-de-sac, faces right out there, so I've given, I super copied and sent copies to police from things that, when they came by our house to see if someone's off shooting in the desert or whatever. And I think that's important, people know that's a voluntary thing, and some people, just so people know, don't pay for that extra service, so their Ring doesn't even save it past a certain period of time. So some people it's just in and out, depending on their camera system.
Yeah, nothing that we're talking about is going to go out and take people's data from them without their consent. It's going to be something that they have to voluntarily submit to and agree to share it with us.
So if you have a suspect in the neighborhood, you can knock on doors, canvass, and see you can see the little rings and see if they have any video that might be helpful.
Yes.
Kind of like the old-fashioned way to do it with a modern twist. I do support this, and I'm looking forward to the next steps. Like I said, I look at all of these 3 prongs together. I have trouble distinguish them, because I think if you just do one without the other prongs, you're really going to have the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. So I appreciate you brought them separately to help explain their different functions and how they tie together. And I look forward to seeing what your plan to crawl is, so we can get there. Although sometimes you want to run, you got to crawl first. So I appreciate that, and I support this.
Vice Mayor.
Well, here's a fun fact. You interviewed City of Chula Vista. That's my hometown. It is south of San Diego and north of Tijuana. So there you go. This is the first time that we've had a strategic plan, and we're learning how to integrate the things, the vision that we cast, and now putting it into action. And city manager, I think, his challenge is like, well, if they say go, they're gonna wanna run, and if we say no, then you've gotta be prepared for that. And so it makes sense to me that you're trying to develop along, because once we say yes, then we want it. And so I think the idea of some more analysis would be very helpful, would definitely appreciate that. But I think we can see that this is definitely the direction we're going. I think Brandon and I have been the only ones who have not gone to Glendale, so maybe we could go there. And okay, that'd be great. And I understand that they have a standalone, it's Glendale only. And then I heard that Mesa does a regional. Have we considered if we want to be regional or if we just want to be Goodyear?
I'm not familiar with Mesa doing a regional one. I thought that they were operating on their own.
Okay, I heard that there were several cities. Now, that's secondhand, but somebody who's also in law enforcement.
Yeah,
said
you know
that
what,
they do
and
that.
it's a very good idea. It's something that's definitely a possibility down the road. I should say, most of, if not all of the cities in the valley that we work with on a daily basis are in talks for the creation or implementation of some sort.
Yeah.
And there certainly, as we continue to grow, could be an appetite for working together and merging.
Well, especially, we're right next door. Our boundaries cross with Avondale all over the place. So,
Yes.
I mean, it's an interesting idea. So I think we're on the right track. I like the approach you have. Let's start slow and build. The technology is going to change. There's going to be a lot of things going to go on, but I think we've got to get in the game.
Councilmember Hampton?
I'm okay with it.
You sure about that, Councilmember Hampton? All right, I think, it's been thoroughly discussed here. I think you've got some direction on coming up with a plan and all that. So with that, I see no further. Next meeting is May 20. No further business. Meeting is over.